Welcome back to episode 2, actually this time, of Graveyard Shift. To be transparent, we've been shuffling the planned episode order a lot in the last couple months. The first FNAF episode we did was not meant to be episode 1.
The whole timeline is fucked.
The whole timeline is fucked, and we're recording this because we scrapped an episode and we thought this would be a fun one to do for the end of the year. We're so good at this.
It's amazing that we somehow managed to pay the bills.
Yeah, I don't know how people our age have kids. I can't even take care of myself.
The amount of times I've woken up on, like, the first of the munch being like...
The first of the munch?
I'm sorry, crunch munch your nuts. We're sending your nuts. Sorry.
I'm gonna play that Daria clip.
We're just crunching your lunch and sending your nuts. Daria, what comes next again?
Bankruptcy court.
When it gets to be the first of the month, I'm like, I totally forgot about rent.
Yeah, you're always reminding me to pay that shit on the first of the munch. Also, we never, introduced ourselves in the FNAF episode because it wasn't supposed to be our first episode, so let's actually explain who the hell we are. My name is Jacob DeRose. I've been around on the internet for a while now. I was the host of Cartoon Conspiracy on channel Frederick for a few years. I did Beyond the Bot with Cristal Marie, who is the other founder of this channel, and host of our sister show, The Nightcap. I've been a video editor for years with companies like Crunchyroll, Netflix, but most importantly, I'm a fan of horror and all things macabre, much like my co-host Ray.
Hi, hello. I'm the complete opposite. I have no online presence, and I like it that way. I'm an anxious recluse, and yeah, I spend most of my time playing horror games, listening to true crime horror podcasts. I pretty much just surround myself with really morbid stuff all the time.
Yeah, usually if I'm writing something or looking into a horror thing, you're my first point of reference. I had to do a Stephen King video a while back, and I just went straight to you because I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Well, funny enough, Stephen King has been a very big influence on me, as a kid. Being an only child, I spent a lot of time, in the dark woods in a cabin reading horror books and being, totally chill with it.
Up in the sticks where at your family's camp. That place would be horrifying.
That's the thing, I remember my cousins were playing Resident Evil, and it's the level where, you see the dogs go past the windows, and then they eventually, jump through.
20 minutes later.
So I remember walking down the trail back to the cabin, and that really freaked me out. And then my cousin's, torturing me with Bloody Mary or whatever. But after that, I became a very morbid kid. I remember in grade 6, I think, we had to do, public speeches or whatever. I did mine on ghost types. I was, all in on telling the class about what poltergeists
Hell
were.
yeah, that's awesome. I remember doing those speeches. I hated doing that.
That's the kind of kid I was. And then it delved into, my parents, we would go to Blockbusters every week, and we would just rent whatever was out. So it led to us watching a ton of horror movies together.
When I met you, to understand who you were, you kept being like, oh, we gotta watch this movie from my childhood. It was my favorite thing to watch when I was a kid. I'd be like, oh, what movie? And you'd be like, House of a Thousand Corpses. And I'd be like, that explains so much. Point being, Graveyard Shift is Ray's first crack at doing online stuff, so everyone be nice to her.
Well, I'm gonna turn this back around on you, mister, to get to know you better. What got you into horror, and what made you a spooky dude?
Honestly, from a very young age, I became hyperfixated with the concept of death.
Oh, me too.
And the inevitability that it was going to happen to me. And I have never come to terms with that, and I am on medication for it. I think my fascination with horror and the macabre is just trying to not familiarize myself with the unknown, but it's a thing that's always fascinated me, just to know that there's the idea of stuff out there that humanity can't know. I think a lot of people can relate to that being sort of there with horror. And also it helps if you as a child consumed a lot of not outright horror, but disturbing media. I remember I showed my ex-girlfriend once. I did what you did to me all the time, where I was like, oh, you gotta watch this movie from my childhood. I loved it. And it was The Brave Little Toaster.
That's not even that horror. It's just kind of disturbing.
But for a kid's movie, it's fucking heavy. And she came out of that being like, wow, I understand so much more of you.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing, because that movie's really deep and really good. That's a really... It would be different if you were like, hey, this really influenced my childhood, and you showed her Cannibal Holocaust or something.
Yeah, no, that's you. That's your bag.
Yeah, why did you think I referenced that just now?
If they can't handle you at your... Have you seen Cannibal
Holocaust? They don't deserve me at my Brave Little Toaster.
Yeah, there you go.
Put that on a t-shirt.
So yeah, if you couldn't tell, we're really trying to hit a duality with this channel. Horror with Graveyard Shift and Horny with the Nightcap, and probably other stuff later as well. But if you're only interested in one of those things, stick around anyway. Maybe you'll broaden your horizons.
But if you like both of those things, may I suggest Hellraiser? That's horror and horny.
I've never actually seen Hellraiser.
Oh my god!
That's one you're gonna have
I
to
gotta
show
show you a pinhead.
Speaking of movies, today we're going to go through every horror movie we watched this year in 2023, whether they came out this year or not, and whether we've seen them before or not, because it's a nice way to tie off the year.
This list is so much shorter than I thought it would be.
20 horror movies is shorter than you thought it would be? Or rather, horror-adjacent movies that we've seen.
In a year. Yeah, exactly. I thought I would have seen more by now.
Consider this. If you watch 52 movies a year, that's a movie a week, right? And we've seen 20 horror movies altogether.
That just means we gotta up our game.
Okay,
next
we'll
year.
up our game next year and we'll put out a 5-hour episode. How's that? So anyway, yeah, I've got my Letterboxd account open next to me to remember what the hell we saw. If you want to see my thoughts on movies in general, you can follow me there at Jacob DeRose. Oscar season's coming up, so I've got a lot of homework to do. Okay, enough of this banter. Let's hit this list semi-chronologically in the order we saw them, and then we're going to rank them in an easy-to-digest, internet-friendly tier list. Also, blanket spoiler warning for all the movies. Watch at your own risk.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're going to have chapters for each movie that you can jump to if you want. So to start, I'm going to go with something that was sort of dominating the discourse about a year ago, actually. Directed and written by Todd Field, released on October 7th of last year. It was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture, and I fully accept that this is kind of a fringe choice to start with, to even call it a horror movie, especially since I'm caught in a never-ending fight with Cristal right now, because she claims that Satoshi Kon's Paprika is a horror movie, which it isn't, but there are elements of Paprika that are like horror related.
Yeah, so that's what we call a thriller.
Exactly. It's not a horror movie, it's a thriller, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if there are horror elements, then whatever, man. I don't care.
So my thinking with Tar is that there are elements of horror in this movie. So by her standards, this movie should be here.
Yeah, that's fine.
Of the two of us, I was the one that saw Tar. Ray did not watch Tar. She's not really a prestige drama type. So let me run you through like what the plot of the movie is for you. Tar is a character study focused on Lydia Tar, who's a brilliant musician and the first openly gay female conductor for one of the most revered orchestras in this super high-class elite world. And throughout the movie, she's on a press tour promoting her new memoir, she's teaching classes at Juilliard, but most importantly, she's preparing for a live recording of Gustav Mahler's Fifth Symphony, which would be her crowning achievement in a career of many such achievements. And it's at this point where everything starts to fall apart for Lydia. And I won't get too heavily into spoilers, but this is a dense movie and it has a lot of themes to explore. It was kind of divisive in online circles because it's one of those movies where your perception of it is going to be really dependent on how you view the main character of Lydia Tar.
Is this one where it's kind of like Fight Club where the narrator is unreliable, or is
it's
it like...
not as blatant as Fight Club, but I would say there is a degree of unreliable narration to it. Like, this was pitched to me as like a cancel culture movie, mostly because it was boomers who were telling me about it, and they were like, it's a movie about a woman who gets canceled. And I think that's a pretty reductive way to look at it. The movie depicts her as a completely irredeemable narcissist who's like well past the point of redemption. And I think where a lot of viewers stumbled was in thinking that since this film is portrayed from her perspective, like we said, it's an unreliable narrator, I think people thought that we're meant to empathize with her in a meaningful way. And, you know, that plays into one of the many themes of the movie of separating the art from the artist, playing into our perceived cognitive dissonance. There is a scene very early in the movie where she's teaching a masterclass at Juilliard, and she gets into this whole argument about whether it's ethically responsible to separate the art from the artist or like address the problematic nature of artists, even if they're from, you know, a century ago or a century and a half ago.
Oh boy, will I be able to like have a little bit to talk about during one of my movies later on about this question.
Well, I mean, that yeah, foreshadowing for, we got some movies by some people who did some stuff that was not 100 years ago.
But no, so yeah, no, I totally understand, at least with that one.
Yeah, and the movie doesn't tell you who is particularly right in that debate, but I think it's fair for me to say that the movie is very clear that Lydia fucking sucks as a person, but we're forced to view her perspective and understand how her mind works, but that's not the same thing as a commendation. If anything, a lot of what she does is a condemnation. And, you know, it's been said so many times before, but this movie is an all-time performance for Cate Blanchett. It's the performance of a lifetime for her. Like, Lydia Tarr, along with serving cunt for the entire movie.
That is the first appearance of the phrase serving cunt that will be in this episode today.
Like, make no mistake about it, Lydia Tarr sucks, but Cate Blanchett is serving cunt through the whole movie. And she's one of those characters that I feel like she only comes along once every few years, like once a decade even. She's someone who is so fully realized that you'd be reasonable to assume that she's just a real person. When I was watching it even, sometimes I forgot this wasn't like based on a true story.
Honestly, it took until right this moment to realize that it wasn't based on a real person, because I thought it was. I thought these kind of movies were just going to be about real people.
Well, there you go. If you go onto Google and you type "is Tar," you're going to see like the first thing that comes up is people asking if it's all based on a true story, because you really get that feeling. Again, I don't think it's unfair for me to say she's like this generation's Patrick Bateman. She's someone who is so meticulously concerned with her own self-image that it becomes her downfall. Not that Patrick Bateman particularly went through a huge downfall in American Psycho, like
No.
from a status perspective.
Yeah.
From a mental perspective, most definitely.
Oh, he didn't give a shit, though.
Still, I feel comfortable making that comparison. I saw a lot of people describe Tar, like, especially with the ending, which I'm not going to get specific about, but people were like, oh, well, the ending, like, it's a dark comedy. And I'm like, no, Tar is a Greek tragedy in the traditional sense of the word. A Greek tragedy generally involves somebody of a high status having a spectacular fall from grace. And Tar is a fall from grace of a character that believes themselves to be above the gods, or in Tar's case, consequences, or in a more specific / nebulous / thematic way, time. And this movie is a journey of humility. And yeah, it's hard to talk about the details of the movie without spoilers, but it was great. There are some great horror elements in it. There's a lot of Easter eggs in the movie that like you might miss on first viewing that really add to the creepiness factor of it. On the tier list, I know you can't really contribute here, but I don't want to set a ceiling or a floor too early, right? I can't put this in S right away.
How coveted do we want the S to be?
I think S has to be something that we both agree is like an instant classic. So I'm gonna put Tar in A tier.
Okay.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that for now, for our first movie to be A tier.
We saw this, I don't think opening weekend, but we saw it like pretty early on.
Going through this list, I genuinely forgot that Megan was this year. I thought it was last year.
I did too, but then I was like, no, I remember absolutely wanting to see this, like, real bad. So basically, a young girl, I think Katie or Caddy, I don't know, they spell it weird. She loses her parents in a car crash because they don't know how the fuck to drive in the snow.
See, as you're giving me the plot, I'm like remembering the movie also, because like I mostly just remember Mithrigan herself.
Oh, I remember a lot of the scenes in this movie. So she gets placed in her aunt's care, and her aunt is like this cool toy, like, inventor, designer, I don't know. She has like a lot of cool toys and like prototypes in her house.
She's got like that whole ass workshop.
Yeah, she's like a workaholic robot toy maker. She has like this big robot in the basement. I think its name was like Bruce or something.
Oh my god, I'm remembering so much about this movie now.
The aunt was like, oh my god, I don't know how to take care of a child. But it just so happens I'm working on a cool robot AI thing, and she looks like a girl, and she's like basically the size of girl, and her name is Mithrigan, so she'll be your attachment figure.
She's the size of a girl.
She's the size of a girl, a whole ass girl.
Child ass child.
So then Mithrigan, this fully kid-sized robot companion thing, her name is Megan, but it's spelled Mithrigan, and I can't not. Basically takes over as the guardian role, and she goes after anybody that she perceives to be a threat between her and Katie, whatever, or like causes the girl distress, makes her cry, like they're...
Oh yeah, doesn't she like kill a kid in the woods?
Okay, so yes, I was gonna say, so there was a scene in the woods, yes, so the kid steals Megan, and I think he like pushes Katie down, I don't remember, but she, like, Megan fucking goes full gremlin mode on him and like barrels towards him with like all four.
Oh yeah,
on all
she's like
fours.
she like gives chase to him through the forest.
Yeah, she like rips his ear off and then like maybe pushes him down a hill and he gets hit by a car and she's just like, guess he shouldn't have been in the road. She's such a cunt. I love her so much, okay? And then a fun fact about this movie was, so originally there were going to be more deaths. There was one scene with the therapist who she was trying to get Katie to like confront her emotions about her parents' death instead of like detaching from it and relying on Megan, and Katie starts to cry. She has like a little bit of a breakthrough maybe, but Megan perceives this as causing distress, and originally that therapist was supposed to bite it, and like they cut down so many deaths in this movie. It could have been amazing. Release the R-rated cut, you cowards.
Oh yeah, so was this like PG-13?
Yeah.
Maybe there's an unrated cut out there somewhere.
Megan was played by Amy Donald for physical scenes, so the ones where she like ape runs, I assume is one of them. So she had this Megan on, and it was like a static face of Megan's mask, so they would have to like put CGI over the face, so I assume that looked terrifying on set, and that is amazing.
So she was doing like the robotic movements of Megan, right?
I have that they had an animatronic puppet for like dialogue and close-ups.
Okay.
A posable stunt version, and then they had the actress, I guess, for like the scene where she dances in the hallway. I assume for like whenever she's running after somebody, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be able to use an animatronic for that dance scene for sure.
Oh god, it's so good. Megan's voice is based on, if you play Portal, GLaDOS, you know.
You know, that makes a lot of sense.
So it's specifically based after that, and I love that because when she gets really snippy, you're like, yeah, I remember that voice being like a real bitch to me while I was trying to figure out those puzzles.
Look at you, sailing through the air majestically, like an eagle, piloting a blimp.
This is the part where you run.
What was the song where she was
It
singing?
was Titanium. I was just
She
about
was
to get to
singing
that.
Titanium.
Yeah, I was just about to get to that because my proposal was, how liberal do we want to be on the S's? Because I was like, S tier, because the scene where she starts singing to the little girl fucking killed me. It's such a good fucking... Okay, this movie is
the thing with Megan, like coming out of it, I thought that was camp as hell.
The writer who did Megan, Akilah Cooper, she also wrote Malignant, and both of which I think she collaborated with James Wan, and
I remember hearing when it came out and people were like, you gotta just go see it.
that's the thing. It's a wild movie, and it's like, okay, yeah, I see how you made this. I don't know, it's a campy ride. I love this movie a lot.
Okay, so hang on. You want to put this in S tier.
Yeah.
See, I don't know if I liked Megan as much as you did.
Oh, I loved it so much. I
definitely liked it.
I'm not going lower than an A, and that's my heart stance.
I know that this movie is gonna live in the hearts of the LGBT crowd for a long time, because Megan became like a gay icon, I think, immediately as soon as that dance trailer came out.
That's the thing. This movie made waves on TikTok, I think, because of that specific dance, and that I think really pushed it in theaters. Maybe not to the degree like, oh, it was an amazing push, but like it did help.
You know what? I'll put Megan in A tier, sure.
Thank you. That's like when you put Hot Topic and Claire's next to each other.
Oh my god. This is the meme with like the all black house with like the super pink house.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan. We both saw this, and we both were anticipating this highly.
Yeah, I mean...
I was.
It's based on the novel The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul G. Tremblay. So let me just get a temperature check here. What has your experience with M. Night been over the year? Because he's a filmmaker whose repertoire precedes himself.
It really depends, I think, on what the first one you saw of him was. So, like, I didn't see Signs until later. I think the first one I saw of his was, I think, The Village? I actually like The Village and the twist. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but I remember liking it more than what
I've been
people
seeing
did.
people come around to The Village in the last few years. I think it's also because like we've seen the shit that M. Night's put out since then.
It's like at least it's not The Happening.
Yeah, be like, you know what, the village actually wasn't that bad in retrospect.
Yeah, so that was, I think, my first one, and then after that, it was kind of like, whenever he released one, if I saw it, I saw it, if I didn't, I didn't kind of thing. It's very not until recently that whenever he makes one where I'm like, God damn it, I guess I gotta go see it.
Did you see Devil?
Yes, I did see Devil, of course I did.
Okay.
It was stupid.
That's one of the ones that I missed.
Oh no, that was one of the ones where it was like, hey, let's go to Blockbuster, what are we watching tonight? Oh, Devil? Great.
Yeah, see, my experience with Devil was when I went to go see Scott Pilgrim vs. the World in theaters, and I've told you this story a million times. We were watching the trailers, it's a theater packed, full of fucking nerds. We see this teaser come on that looks really cool, like the cinematography is interesting, the effects are pretty cool, and then we see the text directed by visionary filmmaker M. Night Shyamalan, and the entire theater just went, oh. The whole theater groaned.
Oh, Brit is in this?
He's really good at doing that. He hooks you, and then you're like, oh, how's he gonna silly this up? But god damn it, I still love it. I still love it.
I desperately want this guy to rack up dubs.
I appreciate him for taking the risks and creative approaches he wants, even if sometimes they don't go the way they should.
So anyway, let's get to Knock at the Cabin, his newest work. If you're unfamiliar, here's the premise of Knock at the Cabin. So a family...
Dave Bautista, that's it.
I'm going to get to Dave Bautista.
Sorry, that's all you need.
A family consisting of two dads and their daughter are visiting a cabin, but they're interrupted by a group of intruders who capture and bind them, and they instruct the members of the family to willingly sacrifice one of their own in order to prevent the apocalypse. And it's left ambiguous for much of the runtime whether or not what they're saying is true.
Kind of, but I mean, throughout the movie, you're pretty much
This is something I'm going to get into, but like that's essentially the premise of both the movie and the novel, The Cabin at the End of the World. That premise is a pretty good fit for a Shyamalan movie. You know, he's done movies about struggling with faith before, like in Signs, and I think that makes sense for somebody like him. Like, far be it from me to read into somebody's personal life based on their body of work. But Shyamalan was raised Hindu. He went to Catholic school, and he came out of all that as someone who professes themselves to be not religious, but spiritual. So I understand why he would make a bunch of movies that are about struggling with your own faith.
Oh no, absolutely. Like, yeah, as somebody who went to Catholic school for all of my school years aside from college, it's a very specific message that you get, and when you explore other types of spirituality, you're like, huh.
It's like, I didn't know there was more than the one option.
That's kind of where I was, where I'm not religious, but I can see why people believe in something.
Yeah, and you know, my background, I was raised a heathen. I wasn't raised as anything in particular, so I can understand having some unresolved ideas about spirituality.
Oh god, yeah, I have unresolved spirituality issues. Like, you kind of just, you either tamp it down or you explore it.
But like, I'm coming from the opposite side of the coin, right? Shyamalan was over-religious, and I was left free to run in the gutter, and my parents were like, "You'll figure it out." Well, joke's on them, I haven't. But yeah, it's one of those movies about struggling with faith. And I think especially, you know, you went to Catholic school, so correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of guilt involved in Catholicism.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you have doubts sewn into you about
Yo, I remember
faith.
during, like, whenever we had to do, like, confession or whatever, I would be sitting there like, I don't know what I did wrong to confess something. I don't know why we all have to be here. I don't feel like I did anything bad.
You're sitting in the confessional booth and being like, Father, what is morality, really?
Yeah, I was like, I don't know what I did, but okay, I guess I'm just gonna make something up.
But also, for Knock at the Cabin, it's one of the rare M. Night Shyamalan movies that doesn't appear to hinge on his fear of old people. So that's nice.
Yeah, that is actually quite nice. So yeah, now that I think about it.
I was like waiting for it the whole time. I was like, when's the old person going to come
When
in?
is it going to be revealed the twist is that it was the old person all along?
Yeah, but that never happened. And it feels like what Shyamalan's been doing lately to beat the none of his characters talk like humans allegations.
It's like he put character dialogue through a translator and translated it back to English.
Yes, that's what his characters sound like.
I don't understand. Like, sir, you've met real people, right?
I think to beat those allegations, what he's been doing is he's been adapting more stuff rather than writing his own original stories. Not that adapting is easy to do, but like it might inform how some of the characters should speak.
It's easier to characterize.
Exactly. Because like in Old, all of the original
Oh my
stuff
God.
before they got to the beach that makes you
It
old.
was so cringe.
Yeah, I have it written down here. It feels like AI wrote the dialogue. And, Knock at the Cabin still doesn't really beat those allegations, but it almost works in the movie's favor.
I didn't notice it as much.
Because, this family being invaded by, this strange group of people, it adds to their otherness that they speak so strangely.
Oh yeah, true. And they do explain they're from different places, different backgrounds, whatever.
Yeah, so I think this is one of the rare times where you have a filmmaking weakness of Shyamalan that ends up working in the movie's favor. And speaking of The Intruders, as with every movie with him, the whole production is elevated by the presence of Dave Bautista.
The moment he shows up, he exudes this he's this very gentle giant kind of guy, and he sells that very well.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Bautista has said in interviews, there's a certain expectation when you're a wrestler who is pivoting to acting. The Rock sort of set the blueprint for that, and John Cena has, I think, been trying to sort of forge a similar path to sort of become the new Rock. But what Batista's been doing is he's been purposely choosing roles that are against type and working with really interesting filmmakers. He's worked with M. Night Shyamalan, obviously. He worked with Rian Johnson in Glass Onion, Denis Villeneuve in Dune, and in Blade Runner 2049. So, he's building this huge repertoire of working with legacy directors, and a lot of these directors critically acclaimed, and he's showing that he can go toe-to-toe with the biggest actors in Hollywood.
Well,
and he's
yeah.
really good at it.
And if you told me 15 years ago when I was a wee lass watching WW with my dad being that Bautista guy, you're gonna watch him in theater one day, on the big screen in a movie, and I would have been what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, because especially when we were kids, there was this whole idea of wrestlers are just failed actors. They're people who can't act.
Have you ever seen wrestlers act? Have you seen some of them? They're so good.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are bad. Some of them were not able to make that transition to film.
But
Hulk Hogan tried it. Bill Goldberg tried it. A lot of the times it doesn't work. But you have your cases where it has worked.
But the thing going with that, it was with John Cena, The Rock, and Goldberg. Goldberg, he played a bunch of security guards and whatever, and then The Rock and John Cena play the same type.
Bill Goldberg played Santa in Santa's Sleigh, spelled Slay.
Forgot about that. Okay, other than that.
But no, but this is what I mean, right? When I say Batista's acting against type.
Yeah, and I agree.
Yeah, and it's doing nothing but helping his case to position him among one of the most interesting actors working today.
Honestly, had Bray Wyatt not passed, he would have probably made great inroads into maybe horror movies with what he was doing. Oh, it would have been so fucking good.
Yeah, pour one out for my boy Wyndham Rotunda. He's honestly the guy that got me back into wrestling in the last 10 years.
Okay, back to the movie.
Back to the movie. All that said, Dave Bautista, great in the movie. Outshines, I think, the other big stunt cast of the movie, which was Rupert Grint.
Yeah. He was fine in it. He wasn't in it as long as I thought he would be.
No, he wasn't. Bautista also has a much larger role than Grint. But as for actual structure, it's extremely predictable and easy to guess the twist.
Yeah.
I try to not let that affect my judgment of the overall quality of the movie, but if you are that type of person, yeah, you're gonna know what's going on incredibly early.
Yeah, or if you're like me and you don't give a shit about spoilers, just enjoy the ride because it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and there are a lot of differences that were changed for the adaptation, most notably the ending. And the movie, compared to the book, is a lot less ambiguous than what the book offers up in terms of, what's actually going on. It's a decently faithful adaptation up to a certain point, at which point basically everything is different. The movie concerns itself with assuming it really is the end of the world, whether everyone on Earth deserves to have their fates decided by such a small group, and whether it would be justified for a gay couple to take out their anger of being persecuted on all of humanity. And the book, meanwhile, is more focused on the personal sacrifice that is demanded of them, and whether the rules laid out should be justified or respected, regardless of what high power may have anointed them.
I can see why they would change it. Audiences kind of like more cut and dry.
Yeah, I mean, movie-going audiences, I think there's this idea where they demand closure and for stuff to be wrapped up.
Yeah.
And the book doesn't really do that where the movie does. And, but there are lots of opinions on there on which of these endings is better handled. The overwhelming majority tend to believe that the book is a better constructed narrative, but it is worth it to watch the movie and then read the book. In terms of its quality, I kind of just want to give Shyamalan a dub. Like, it is a deeply flawed movie, but
It's
it does
fine.
a lot of stuff really well.
Yeah.
And I want to give it bonus points for repping the GOAT, Kiki's Delivery Service, right off the top of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
When Dave Bautista asks the girl her favorite movie, and she's like,
What's your favorite movie?
Kiki's Delivery Service.
and I was like, yeah, let's fucking go.
Of his more recent movies, this one is pretty good.
Yeah, anyway, I'm thinking B tier or C tier.
Oh man, no, I think B because I remembered stuff that happened in it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those movies that like sort of demands discussion. Let's put it in B for now, and we'll see if that changes as we keep going down the
Okay.
list. Directed by Elizabeth Banks. Yes, that Elizabeth Banks. Produced by a small army of people, most notably Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Lego Movie.
You fucker.
This was another one that we were like, we have to fucking see this in theater because it's so stupid. And it was.
It's a movie that its entire marketing and premise was based on the title of the movie.
What if it would be funny if a bear did cocaine?
Yeah, so you know what I love about this movie? If you go to the Wikipedia page for it, underneath the inspiration heading, there's a subheading dedicated entirely to creative liberties.
Well, I mean, like,
And I've
based
never
on
seen a
the
phrase that
real
way before.
story, yeah, a lot of them would have had to have been taken, yeah.
Yeah, and we all know this movie's based on a true story. A dead bear was found in Georgia in 1985, surrounded by coke containers after a smuggler and ex-cop, because of course he was a cop, dumped at least one duffel bag of it from his plane due to load, and then he reportedly got spooked thinking the feds were tracking his plane, so he jumped out of the plane, and then he died when his parachute didn't open, but enough about him.
That's pretty funny that didn't make it into the movie. Fucking loser.
The bear died after ingesting a likely ludicrous amount of cocaine. And, of course, you can visit the bear today at the Kentucky for
Yes.
Kentucky Fun Mall in Lexington, Kentucky. And the film Cocaine Bear asks the question, what if instead of that happening, a bunch of different shit happened?
Yeah, that's it. And it's what the movie gives you.
The movie's marketing really lent into it being a head-empty movie.
A bear did cocaine!
It's not one that forces you to think very critically. Like, there are overarching themes of, like, family and protecting your loved
No,
ones.
whatever, I don't care.
Exactly. It's a B movie, creature feature type deal.
It's one of those things where it's like, the Godzilla movie focused too much on the army white man. Give me more Godzilla.
Honestly, I think that is still a problem with this movie. I think
Yes.
instead of trusting in that, it muddled things up with like a lot of side stories
Yes.
and characters to keep track of. We bounce around the park a lot, and not to say it's hard to keep track of, but there just wasn't enough bear.
No, there wasn't. Like, there was the whole scene in the cave where the mom is like, if she finds the daughter and is like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, girl, I don't care. Go back to the baby bears discovering the cocaine bags.
Honestly, I can't remember a whole lot about the movie other than it had that guy from TikTok who does all the funny customer service videos.
Here's what you need to know before you see Cocaine Bear. Nothing. You don't need to read a comic book from 1978. The bear wasn't introduced at the end of the Eternals. If you've ever heard the words cocaine or bear before, you're completely up to speed.
I only really remember the ambulance scene.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I also remember Margot Martindale kind of stealing the show as the park ranger right up until she gets meat crayoned in that ambulance scene. And honestly, Isaiah Whitlock Jr., I thought he was great too. The cop, the whole scene when he's on the gazebo, I thought was great.
No, like, the movie's comedy is really good. It's just more bear.
Yeah, but like Whitlock, he's done plenty of comedy before. I think he was giving a lot of shades of Clay Davis in The Wire. He's the one in the show. He's the one that always goes, she. Oh yeah, and the quote of the movie is by the kid at the end, where he yells out,
I'm Henry, and I am so fucking tired!
Any movie that has a kid where it's like, it's not like gratuitous over the top kid swearing, but it's just like, it really hits.
And yeah, it's a premise that you expect to be like laugh out loud with tons of gore, and I remember being a bit disappointed on both fronts. Like, not that it isn't gory or funny, it definitely is, but I feel like it could have gone farther with both, especially because it's an R-rated film.
We were already expecting a no-brain silly movie.
But also our gore tolerance is higher than most people.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? And like, but honestly, if you're watching or listening to this, yours probably is too. And this is a theme you're probably going to see pop up again later in the episode. But I remember talking to my sister-in-law, and she was like, oh, I want to watch Attack on Titan. What is it on the gore scale?
Oh, good. I don't know.
We were like, on our scale, it's probably like a 4 or 5, but to you, it's probably like an 8 or 9.
Yeah. There's very few things in horror movies that really get to me, and there's only like maybe one movie on this list or two that kind of like really got to me with certain things.
That's the thing. We're going through this and ranking these movies based on how much we enjoyed them, not how scary they were.
Yeah, like when I watch a horror movie, sure, sometimes I'm expecting to get scared, but most of the time I watch them to go, oh, that was so cool, you know?
Yeah. Like, also on the gore front, I found that Elizabeth Banks actually kind of agrees with us. She said in a Variety article, quote, I don't recommend anyone do this, but if you go down the internet hole of looking at actual animal attacks on humans,
oh, absolutely,
it's fucking gnarly as shit.
Well, we grew up with the good old internet not being regulated, so we got...
Oh yeah, we grew up with Rotten.com.
Yeah, so we got surprised with links to really graphic shit, so, you know...
Oh yeah, no, you weren't a real internet veteran unless you'd seen a beheading video on
or you accidentally downloaded a porn video on LimeWire because you thought it was like American Pie.
She went on to say, she was like, I love gore, I grew up on Evil Dead, the gore is the fun part. And like, I think as my parting words on this, I remember the score by Devo's Mark Mothersbaugh to go like way harder than it needed to. Like, it was this heavy, synthy, melodramatic, like pseudo 80s feel. Mm-hmm. Which he knows all about because he was in Devo.
Oh, yeah.
But although it's reductive to say he's from Devo because, like, he's scored so much other stuff. Like, the dude's low-key a legend.
Yeah,
he's scored so many TV shows and movies.
Whip it good.
But yeah, he also lived it and, like, was part of defining that sound.
Man was a traffic cone for a career, okay?
He knows all about cocaine, probably.
Probably.
As for ranking, I don't know. What do you think?
Honestly, this movie, it's not very good.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I would put it like mid-range. I think that's exactly where it wants to be.
Honestly, I wouldn't watch it again.
I would watch Cocaine Bear again if I was doing like a dumb movie night with friends.
I guess if it was a friend who hadn't seen it before, but I'd be on my phone most of the time.
Okay, how about C for Cocaine?
Yeah, C for Cocaine.
Oh boy, here we go.
Okay.
Ray, what's your favorite slasher movie of all time?
I love Scream. Okay, Wes Craven is one of my favorite directors ever. I even watched his movie, My Soul to Take. Okay, I love that, man.
You bet your sweet fucking bippy you're gonna watch Scream.
You bet your sweet fat bottom girls that I watch Scream 1 again for Halloween because I do every goddamn year.
You bet your sweet bippy I did.
I think everybody knows the plot of this movie. You know, it's so baked into modern slasher genre, like Girl.
It was the original, like, meta slasher film.
Well, that's the thing. It's like Girl's targeted by killer. Surprise, it's her boyfriend all along and his totally not boyfriend all along. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, if you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
Look, are you trying to insinuate something?
No. Yes.
Tumblr AO3 crowd, stand up.
You know that the Billy Stew tag is updated on the regular. This movie is about a town that gets terrorized like Halloween as a teenage girl, Sydney, is being targeted by a mass killer. Ghostface, hell yeah.
First name Ghostface, last name hell yeah.
Yeah. What I love about Scream, so there's the character in the movie who I'm proud to say that I am not named after, but we share a name. Randy, so he completely calls who the killers are, like pretty early on. He's a very genre-savvy movie buff. He calls it because it's obvious.
Is he the one that, like, lays out the rules?
Yes, at the party, he's like, the rules.
You can never have sex.
Big no-no!
And in the beginning, you're like, oh yeah, it could totally be the boyfriend. But then the movie does things to make you think, oh, it's not him. And then at the end, you're like, oh, there was 2 killers all along. And before this, with Friday the 13th, Halloween, it was usually only 1 killer, or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if it was a whole family, it was kind of obvious that there was more than 1.
2 killers was like a pretty revolutionary twist.
And then there's the part with how the movie kind of tricked the audience with its opening. So everybody probably knows about, like, you know, the Drew Barrymore opening of the movie. She gets a call. She has to basically just answer his trivia questions, and she gets it wrong, she dies. whoa, that's surprising because Drew Barrymore got top billing, she was promoted.
Yeah, they pulled a Psycho.
Yeah, they pulled a Psycho. And that wasn't really, like, done all that often.
Yeah, there's a reason it's called Pulling a Psycho, because I think those are the only two movies that are really pulled it off.
Yeah,
really
and
well.
it's a very iconic opening scene, and when you go back to watch that knowing that there's two killers, like, my favorite moment is she has to guess which door the killer is behind. That's her, like, last test. But she loses because the killer is behind both.
Game was rigged from the start.
That's the thing, and I love it. And Ghostface has become iconic. Wes Craven is really good at doing that. Like, he created Freddy. This movie influenced the usage of caller ID.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well,
that makes sense,
you
but
get
I
an
didn't know
anonymous
that.
call. What's your favorite scary movie? You know, it's a very iconic movie, and it's also the first appearance of Matthew Lillard. Woohoo! Which, early fun fact, all of Stu's iconic lines were ad-libs, which, come on, Matthew Lillard, you're so good!
Yeah, no, there's a reason this is not his only appearance on the list. I think Scream also has a very prescient place in horror cinema, because at the time, I think Craven was also trying to make a statement on the glamorization of slasher movies, which, again, is something he knew all about. The glamorization of slasher movies, and particularly, I think, violence against women.
Absolutely. Like, his final girls are so fucking well-rounded. Like, a lot of his movies do have a commentary underneath. In Scream, I will explain a little bit later as well, they have a movie franchise called Stab, based on the events that happened in Scream.
But it also is functionally just the Scream franchise in its own universe.
Yeah. So it's based on Gail Weathers in the movie, her book, the book being published against Sydney's wishes, some opinions in there that she didn't gel with. And Gail is a reoccurring character. She has a habit of doing this. She publishes true crime books. And this actually touches on a huge true crime morality question right now. I'm going to go off on a tangent. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I listen to a ton of true crime, and there's always this moral question of, is this exploitative? How do we cover this respectfully? And Gail Weathers is very much a person who is exploitative. She publishes these books without the best interest of the victims in mind, and that fuels a lot of her character. And so there's a lot of commentary Wes Craven puts in the movie about, like, fictionalizing or adapting a story about, like, a murder like this, I guess.
Yeah, and sensationalizing the story as well. There's also an episode of Black Mirror, I think, that came out this year that's also basically about that.
How come you're using this old thing?
I had the police forensic shot on tape back then.
Plus, old tech, cool, analog horror atmosphere.
Proper Blair Witch.
So the killers, Billy and Stu, have different motives in the movie. And the studio were split on it. So basically they did both because there's two killers. Billy did it because his mom left due to Sydney's dad. There was infidelity, parental abandonment, yada yada yada. Mommy didn't love me, so I'm gonna kill somebody, you know? And Stu didn't really have one. In the scene when Sydney asks him, he's like,
"What's your motive? Billy's got one. The police are on their way. What are you gonna tell them?"
Peer pressure.
So you have this one angry teenage boy and his friend who just kind of seizes on the opportunity, and there are a lot of true crime cases like that. There are a lot of duos. I could list them. I'm not going to, because that's a different conversation. And that's what I find the scariest. Like, opportunity killers, like in the movie The Strangers, the big line was, "Because you were home." The serial killer Richard Chase took unlocked doors as a sign to, "Come on in, you can terrorize this house." I find no motive like Stu's to be the scariest, and that's why Stu, to me, is my, like, top ghost phase.
Yeah, it's just you truly don't know the evils that people are capable of just cuz.
And okay, yeah, final bit is Matthew Lillard, iconic. He got the part after being with his then girlfriend who was auditioning for, like, whatever else on some kind of lot or in a building. And then, like, the casting director was like, "Hey, you should do an audition for this." And he did, and he got it due to incredible ferocity, which, yeah, you can tell.
And now he's Shaggy.
Like, what do they want with us? What if they eat my brains?
It'll be a light meal.
Dare I even ask where this goes on the tier list?
Oh, S for Scream, baby!
S for Scream, baby!
Absolutely. I'm sorry, like, I watch this movie, like, every year, along with, like, Scream 2. People are iffy on Scream 2. Fuck you. The lunch cafeteria scene is cringe as hell. I love it.
You thought we were done with Scream? Haha, fuck you!
Scream 6 is a direct sequel to Scream 5. Scream 5 is set 25 years after the first Scream, set in Woodsboro, stars Jenna Ortega as Tara Carpenter. She's attacked by, obviously, Ghostface. They were a teen couple who met online and were disappointed in how the recent in-universe Stab movie turned out to be. They spout a bunch of meta dialogue about like sequels, reboots, whatever, and they wanted to like inspire a better Stab movie, so they went on a killing spree.
I'm still pretty confident that 5 Cream was about The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Remember the Stab movie that came out last year?
Oh yeah, the one the Knives Out guy directed, right? You know, I actually really liked that one.
The hardcore Stab fans hated it. You go on 4chan and Reddit. All they're talking about is how Stab 8 pissed on their childhoods, how they crammed in social commentary just to make it elevated, how the main character is a Mary Sue.
What's a Mary Sue? You really don't want to know.
Wait, but then what was Scream 4 about? A Scream 5 was the couple.
I don't know, Scream 4 came out in like 2011.
Wait a second.
Are you doing the thing again where you're conflating Scream by itself with 5 Cream?
Maybe.
Ray has this thing where she keeps thinking that Scream 5 and 5 Cream are different movies. Because Scream 5 is just called Scream, and we call Scream 5 5 Cream. So there must be different movies, but they're the same movie.
Wait, then what was Scream 4?
Scream 4.
Wait. Oh, that's the one with Hayden Panettiere. Okay, no, yeah, it's fine. Never mind. Doesn't matter. The only reason Scream 4 matters is because Save the Cheerleader, Save the World shows up, and she's from Scream 4, and that's the only reason it matters.
Yes, and she's in Scream 6.
Yes, because it ties... Okay, yeah.
Otherwise, it's all 5 Cream.
Yes, okay, so Scream 6. So it's set a year after the new rounds of killings, basically, in Woodsboro. In Scream 5, we meet Tara's sister, Sam, who will be a main character in 6. So she's the daughter of Billy Loomis, one of the killers in the first Scream. I don't know when he knocked somebody up because he died at the end of the first movie, but like he was a hot teenage playboy, but like I don't know how he had an illegitimate daughter, but like whatever.
Don't worry about it. It's movies.
Okay, but like, so yeah, this sibling duo, these two sisters, they're in New York a year later. It's Jason Takes Manhattan, baby! Except this movie is better, but like it's less fun than Jason Takes Manhattan.
Time for Ghostface Takes Manhattan.
With Scream, the opening scene is kind of important because the first movie had such an iconic one. Everybody, I think, knows about it. And Scream 2 has the one with Jada Pinkett Smith getting stabbed in the theater while everybody's watching, stab around her and being like rowdy, and she dies on the stage, and it's very...
Yeah, it needs to set this sort of expectation of like anybody is expendable.
Yeah, so this scene, they do like a twist on it, and I actually kind of like what they did with it. A professor gets catfished to go to a bar. She goes outside to find her date, is led around to like an alley. She gets murdered by her student, who is in a Ghostface mask. Immediately we're like, oh shit, Ghostface. But he goes home, and he takes off his mask, and he's on the phone with, like, I can't quite remember, a roommate or something, I don't quite remember, like a classmate. And we find out he killed her because of grades, and he's going to plan on killing the Carpenter sisters to finish what the killers in the previous movie started, which was to reboot the Stab franchise or inspire a new film based on these murders. And the voice, turns out whoever's on the phone is not who he thought, and that's right, it's Ghostface coming at you with a knife.
Shit,
and
baby.
so you have in the scene Ghostface killing a Ghostface, and you're like, whoa!
We have to finish the movie. Who gives a fuck about movies?
Sam is being harassed and accused of being the master behind the previous year's killings because she's the daughter of the original Ghostface, and she's being overprotective of her sister who just wants to move on, you know, like forget and just move on, and where Sam is kind of struggling with her newfound identity of being the daughter of a killer. Yeah, so that whole thing's going on, and then Ghostface just stabs. He does his thing. He's just stabbing whoever, man.
He's stabbing again, but this time in the big old city.
Yeah. So this culminates at the end, the set piece being an abandoned theater that's like a shrine to all the ghost faces and previous murders. And as a Scream fan, like, you can pause this scene and be like, oh shit, that's the TV, or that's Stu's like really rad-ass smoking jacket. The killers turn out to be two siblings, and whoa, surprise, a third ghost face. Whoa, franchise newness. So the third is their dad, who is a cop.
Because of course he's a cop.
So he uses like cop skills to get a bunch of evidence related to the previous murders, which I don't know how he got the TV that killed Stu. Like, I don't know how he got that, but whatever.
He used his cop powers. All cops in America know each other.
Turns out the dad and these two siblings, their brother was Richie the killer from 5. One, like the guy from that couple. So they're like a whole murder family now, and they're mad that Sam killed Richie, even though it was in self-defense, you fucking dorks. While I like this movie more than I did the last one, the invincible character trope is getting out of hand. One of the twins, the guy, I can't remember his name, but he's like the nephew of Randy from the first movie. He gets stabbed so many times, and he's in the ambulance at the end, and they're just talking to him.
Yeah, and he's fine.
They're just talking, like the sisters have, like, they're wrapped up and they're just talking to him. They've been stabbed, but they're just talking to him beside the ambulance. But it's inconsistent because in the first movie, you have Stu and Billy stabbing each other because it's part of their plan. And Stu says,
I'm feeling woozy here!
Also, I think that it's a case of, like, slasher power creep.
That's the
where,
thing.
Like, in the first movie, if somebody gets stabbed, like, that's a huge deal. Like, they're fucked. At this point, we're in the 6th movie in the franchise. For a character to get stabbed once, I think people would be like, oh, well, whatever.
But it's just the thing of, like, because there was the scene, it's a really cool scene. I really like some of the kills in this movie. There's a scene where she's crawling across a ladder between 2 windows. Her intestines are full on, just like sliced and diced. And she's crawling across this ladder. She dies, but she hustles more than you would think. I don't know. I'm very much of, like, Scream for me is very much a series of 2 really good movies that I love with all my heart, and then the rest of the series kind of hit or miss with me in terms of really being into the movie or not. But Scream 6 and 5, like, they're not bad. They're pretty good for what they are. I like it more than I do some of the movies, I guess, in the series. Just for, like, I guess the new environment being in New York, like, the bodega scene was really cool, seeing Ghostface in the streets. So for, like, that regard, I'm gonna rate it, like, I'm gonna say, like, maybe a B, I suppose.
B for...
Baby, I wish this was Scream 1.
Alright, next up, we are really stretching the limits of what is horror.
This is about a vampire, it counts. There's kills.
It's why I say this is a horror-adjacent list.
Fuck you, I consider this horror. There's vampires, there's blood, people die.
This is a comedy film, right?
It's a comedy horror.
So for those who may not remember, this is a movie about Renfield, Dracula's familiar, who lures in and captures victims for Dracula to consume. Yeah, there's a line in the trailer that's like...
You're like the guy that gets the villain's Postmates.
Oh my god, I forgot.
Thankfully, that line is not in the movie.
I forgot about that line. It's so...
But that is essentially the premise of the film.
Yeah, basically.
And apparently, this was originally supposed to be like a much darker movie, rather than kind of the straightforward comedy that it is.
Yeah, but then they wouldn't have gotten Nicolas Cage.
Well, it was supposed to be part of a shared universe.
Yeah.
A dark universe, if you will.
Yeah, and what movie did they decide to lead with to promote this universe that everybody loved so much?
Yeah, so this movie got significantly retooled when The Mummy flopped, and Universal was like, they were like, let's do something different.
Yeah, The Mummy 2017 is we have Brendan Fraser at home. It is not good.
Yeah, play that clip of the pre-release trailer that got posted by accident with Tom Cruise screaming.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Yes, this was directed by Chris McKay.
I didn't realize he had been involved with my childhood fever dream of Moral Oral.
Moral Oral was a fucked up show, dude.
I didn't realize it until seeing clips recently. Holy shit, dude.
I'm just imagining somebody who was like raised Catholic finding this and thinking it's like a Davy and Goliath kind of show.
Yeah, this is kind of thing where it's like,
and just getting traumatized. But I mean, that sort of gives you the idea of what kind of movie we're getting into here. It's not as horrific as Moral Oral.
Nicholas Hoult, like, that whole sequence with him, like, making up his new apartment, getting new clothes, it's so cute, and you wish so bad for him to just, like, be free.
If you want a movie with a character who is baby girl,
oh god, Nicholas
Hoult in this movie is the babiest girl. Like, the whole time, like, we were just swooning over him.
I love Nicholas Hoult so much. He's such, like, a low, like, under the radar guy.
Based on my experience and the company I keep, if you're a bisexual person who has a thing for tall, pale, lanky dudes who look like they haven't slept in a month, this movie was literally made for you.
Yeah.
Both Nicholas Hoult and Nicolas Cage are extremely fuckable in this movie, depending on what you're into.
Absolutely. Like, there are some scenes with them, like, they're fighting with each other at like, Nicholas Hoult's apartment, and it's like, you guys are chewing so much scenery, and it is amazing.
The writer of the movie, Ryan Ridley, he also comes from, like, a Dan Harmon background. He wrote 25 episodes of Community, 10 episodes of Rick and Morty, and 2 episodes of Blue Mountain State.
That threw me.
So, like, that's the kind of tone you're hitting for this movie.
Give me a hell. Give me a yeah.
Blue Mountain State, criminally underrated show.
There's nothing to be scared of. Really?
And also the movie, Renfield, is based on a story written by Robert Kirkman, who's primarily known for creating The Walking Dead and Invincible. So there's a lot of precedent in this creative team for irreverence and a lot of gory red mist.
Which there was a lot of. There's like that bit where like Nicolas Cage is hooked up to like IV bags of blood, and it's like an IV bag like blood throne. It's really cool.
This movie was so dumb.
It's so fucking
It was
stupid.
so stupid. And I would genuinely be shocked if it didn't become a cult classic vampire movie in the next few years.
No, absolutely. I absolutely want to watch this again because it's just like you're watching it and it's just, there are some bits, obviously they try to put the emotional core into the movie that they have to put in.
But I think that the emotional core of this movie actually works towards it because Nicholas Hoult is able to sell it so well.
If it was just Nicholas Hoult and we didn't have the cop with him, maybe.
I don't know. I've heard people say that they generally don't like Awkwafina for being obnoxious.
I'm indifferent.
I haven't seen her in a lot of stuff. I can't, like, make that call. I think the only thing I've seen her in other than this was like Raya and the Last Dragon, which, in fairness, I wasn't a huge fan of.
But that movie itself, I wasn't a fan of, so I can't really say it was her fault or not.
Yeah, like, I haven't seen any big reason for me to dislike her, and especially not in this movie. I thought her chemistry with Holt was really cute.
No, it was fine. It's just, I don't know. I think because he had the group meetings, we didn't really need her, maybe?
The group meetings had their own sort of vibe to them. It is kind of a shame we didn't get more of those characters.
They were funny.
The whole movie was, I think, carried, though, through Holt's charm.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, there's the one fight in the apartment complex where I couldn't fucking contain my laughter.
Yeah.
Where he, like, stomps a guy in midair, and there's a blood fountain coming up, and he's just standing there, and as they fall, there's this slow motion shot of him, and he sees Awkwafina, and he just starts waving at her. It was so stupid. I love that scene so much. And so, you know, we see at least one requisite Nick Cage movie every year, and this was this year's. But you know how Cage puts everything into every role that he's ever played? That is still true in this movie for Dracula. I don't remember all that much about the plot.
There was, like, no plot.
Yeah, like, I know Ben Schwartz is in it, something about the Mafia. It was very funny to hear Sonic the Hedgehog swearing. But, like, it's just an extremely silly movie about the struggle and empowerment that comes with escaping an abusive relationship.
The montage of him becoming his own person, and then there's a scene where he kind of gets crushed a little bit when Nick Cage finds out. You do feel for him in that moment. They do push that message across very well, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And, like, if you've been in a relationship like that, I can see how those scenes could really affect you. But at the same time, it's ain't not that deep.
Yeah.
It's not a landmark of cinema, but, like, watching this in the theater was a blast. I think if you see this with a group of people, you're gonna have a great time. And it's a really wholesome movie.
Yeah.
It's like a complete splatterfest, but it's a very wholesome movie. And I think it's carried by Nicholas Hoult.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't seen The Menu or, like, anything else with him before this, so seeing all of my bi friends, like, swooning over him, I was like, what is the big fucking deal with this guy?
You don't even know!
I saw him for 10 seconds in this movie, and I was like, oh, I get it. I get it now.
Because when I saw him in the trailer, I was like, oh, Nicholas Hoult, we gotta go see this.
Yeah. So what are we thinking?
This is gonna be controversial, but this is a A tier for, that was fucking cool.
I am inclined to agree with you. I was actually going to try to make an argument for S tier.
No.
Because I do genuinely see this becoming a cult classic later on, which is weird, because, like, reviews for it were not good. And
no,
I
absolutely
genuinely don't know why.
People don't like fun movies anymore.
This is one of those movies that if you look it up online, you will see clickbait thumbnails that are like, scariest movie ever, do not watch. And I don't think it's that scary.
No.
But I don't disagree that there's something about East Asian horror, Korean horror, that just gets it in a way that American horror doesn't.
I specifically remember this because it freaked me out, where you can see fingers coming like on the screens of their cameras because it's like trying to get them, and then they turn around, nothing's there. And it's like, whoa, that was so good. One of the girls in the movie, she mentions like this list. It was like a BuzzFeed like list of most haunted places in the world. This asylum was one of them. I don't know if it was the inspiration for this movie, that list, but that list is definitely like a thing.
It leans into the idea that this movie is very much about internet culture.
Oh yeah.
The closest equivalent I can think of in terms of like an analog to this movie from an Canadian perspective, because it is a Canadian film, would be Grave Encounters.
They are very similar movies of a ghost hunting team go into an abandoned asylum and film, and it's found footage, and then the asylum itself, which actually goes into one of my fears of shifting buildings, where the building itself is haunted instead of like a being. It's the building itself is evil. But then, yeah, that's kind of like where the similarity is.
They're also both about the cynicism behind ghost hunting productions.
Oh yeah, because in each movie, I think both movies, they fake evidence because they're like, we need to drum up views and drama. And then the ghosts are like, psych, bitch.
Yeah, I think both North America and South Korea, respectively, they have very different cultural touch points when it comes to ghost hunting, though I've never been to South Korea, so correct me if I'm wrong. But North American ghost hunting culture seems very dependent on television shows. Ghost hunters, people like Zach Baggins,
paranormal calling on camera.
Even on, YouTube, produced, tightly edited experiences to sift through all the boring parts of ghost hunting. Or if you're Netflix, just making a boring show like 28 Days Haunted.
Oh, God.
That's what North American ghost hunting is for. Or, staging a bunch of shit to try to make mediums not seem like a complete joke.
Whoever the this is definitely didn't want me to come here and find this out. Because that thing tried to prevent me from even going into the room to meet dead people.
But meanwhile, I've also seen a lot of Asian focus on live streaming ghost hunts from places like Japan or Korea or India or like, other countries in like the Arabian Peninsula. Like they'll stream ghost hunts from someone's phone. And this, I think, is the key difference between Grave Encounters and Gonjiam, though both follow like a similar narrative structure. Both crews cynically begin a ghost hunt with the intent of making money or gaining status rather than like really being in it for the love of the game, It's
very much once you enter this location, all bets are off because you can't fight a building that is shifting.
Yeah, or once you entered, it was already over.
It was rigged from the start, baby!
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not accusing Gonjiam of being a ripoff of Grave Encounters in any sense. It's hardly an unknown type of setup for a movie. Gonjiam Psychiatric Hospital, like you said, Ray, it's a real place. It's a real former asylum. Or rather, it was demolished in the months after this movie came out, I assume for unrelated reasons.
I think so.
Though the owners did have a problem with the movie, saying that it would affect the resale value of the property.
Yeah, I could imagine.
But also, I feel this goes without saying, all the ghost and murder shit isn't really based in reality, as far as I'm aware. The hospital closed in the 90s due to sanitation and money issues, and the building stood condemned for many years, which is how it got its reputation as being haunted. I feel like we can't say too much about it without spoiling a lot of the scares.
That's the thing,
which is not something I want to do with this movie. It's not a long movie. It's only like 90 minutes, and even then, I would call it a pretty slow burn.
The thing that this movie, that Grave Encounters also does, is it's a slow burn up until the last act where all the visuals start to kick in.
Exactly. And once that third act kicks in this movie, I think it's some of the best atmospheric found footage I've ever seen in terms of ghost movies.
Yeah, the scene where they find that just room where it's like the whispering and the hands coming in trying to take them. It's fucking freaky.
Yeah, it's quiet and subdued and restrained. Anything that does happen, like, really fucks with you. And I like that payoff more than anything in Grave Encounters, honestly.
But that's the thing that Grave Encounters is they rely on the jump scare stinger. Well, they are effective, but it does the Americanized, like...
Yeah, again, that's your America versus, like, East Asia kind of thing. So what are you thinking for Gonjiam Haunted Asylum?
Yo, Gonjiam fucking slaps. A for Asylum.
A for Asylum. I like that. Our A tier is getting pretty crowded already, but well-deserved, I think. Next up...
Another kind of horror movie, maybe.
I would consider this a horror film.
I don't think it's a horror movie, but okay.
You don't?
I don't.
What do you consider it then?
It's a mix of so many different things. Calling it a horror movie is like... It doesn't make sense to me.
Would you call it a musical comedy?
No.
You're one ahead of the Golden Globes, then.
Oh, God.
It had a budget of $35 million and made $11.5 million.
I cannot believe it only made that much.
I can.
I don't know, because it's Ari Aster, and he's such a big name with the horror world, right? Like,
Ari Aster, I think, said in an interview that this was literally him cashing in all of his goodwill from Hereditary and Midsommar.
Oh, that totally makes sense.
And he was like, now I can finally make my weird movie.
No, you do the 2 for them, 1 for me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And boy howdy, is it 1 for him.
Ah, yes. Joaquin Phoenix.
Ah, Joaquin.
Nominated for the Golden Globe for the hilarious musical comedy film Beau is Afraid.
So we know how to pronounce his name, we just pronounce it that way because it's funny.
Although Ari Aster himself, he said in interviews that he sees Beau is Afraid as more of a comedy.
I can see that.
He thinks it's a sad comedy.
Oh,
but
it's a very
still like
depressing...
a sad, dark comedy.
It's a depressing sad.
Yeah, and he's also described it before as a Jewish odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I obviously can't speak to the Jewish experience.
Me neither.
Yeah, I got the sense that from watching this movie and from my Jewish friends that I've spoken to, that there's a lot of guilt involved in that experience, particularly with parental figures. And that's something I can relate to.
And boy, does that movie deliver.
There's a very present theme with his stuff of like intergenerational trauma and abuse within families. I mean, granted, I haven't seen Midsommar.
It deals with the themes of grief and family loss, that kind of thing.
Okay, so it does still like sort of fit under that umbrella.
Yeah.
That's something I noticed in Hereditary and his thesis film that he made, The Strange Thing About the Johnsons, which I know you haven't seen.
No.
But it's deeply fucked up, basically by design. I think he said that they wanted to explore something that was so taboo that people didn't even want to acknowledge it. Like, they went out with the intent of making people as uncomfortable as possible. And what they came up with was a son sexually abusing his father.
Okay, yeah, no, I do know about this movie. Yeah, so there is a movie, God, I can't remember what it's called. But it's set out to be like the most grotesque, fucked up movie ever. And I watched it and I'm like, y'all are trying too hard. I get where you're coming from, but it's over the top. Whereas, from what I've heard about Ari Aster's like first film, it's less over the top than that, just more fucked up.
Oh, it's not over the top at all. It's still very much like an Ari Aster film.
Yeah.
Like, you can see that in its production, even at that early point in his career. To the point where I was watching it and I was like, is he okay? Yeah, you know, like I said, don't make assumptions about someone's upbringing because of their work, but like...
I would just really like to know his inspirations.
Yeah. And, you know, if you've got mommy issues, especially those of a controlling mommy, whoo boy, do I have the movie for you.
So yeah, we saw this, like, was it opening? We got, like, the VIP, like, yeah, recliner seats, and thank God we did, because this movie's a fucking marathon!
Because it's 3 hours long. But, like, this is a hard movie to talk about, honestly, because
I don't know what happened!
Well, that's the thing, like, it sort of demands that you try to figure it out, peel back the layers of the storytelling.
But I don't want to watch it again, is the thing.
Okay, your gripes with how long it was aside.
No, it's not even that. It's just, like, I have no real desire to watch it again to figure things out. Because it's like, I'm not gonna.
Okay, well, you're not gonna, but, like, let's pretend you are, okay? It feels like it's demanding you try to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
To, like, find the true essence of, like, what's this movie really about?
But, like, the movie starts out in this it's very realistic, but obviously not real world, with, like, the hyper violence happening in the background, and you're like, what's real, what's not, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, and, like, by Ari Aster's own admission, to try to figure out what this movie is about or what this movie is doing is kind of the wrong way to watch the movie, in his opinion. He's much more like a just sit back and take in all of these things that happen to this guy. Like, use Bo as an avatar for yourself.
I think that's kind of how you have to do it, at least for your first watch, because if you watch it trying to figure stuff out on your first pass, you're not gonna just watch this weird journey.
Yeah, like he said on the show Q with Tom Power, that one of the main emotions he associates with the movie, other than guilt, obviously, and anxiety, obviously, those are sort of your main two, but the emotion that he most closely associates with the movie is ambivalence.
Yeah.
Like, just, I guess, sort of this idea of, like, passivity and the unsettling consequences that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this isn't a movie that's, like, meant to be experienced literally. Like the title suggests, we're viewing this through Bo's perspective, and he is afraid.
God damn, is he afraid?
Yeah, like, it's all allegory for how he sees the world. And in my mind, how his tumultuous relationship with his mom has impacted every facet of his life, like imparting that guilt, that anxiety that he's just always feeling, because that presence of his mother's control is always there. In terms of like how, like, its structure, what Ari Aster, I think, really excels at in his movies is rising tension. He's a master at it.
Oh yeah.
You know that feeling you get sometimes where you have like a tightness in your chest and it feels like all your muscles are clenching all at once, like when a panic attack is coming on?
Yes, me all day, every day, baby.
I mean, you know what that feels like. That's what this whole movie feels like.
Yeah.
It's like waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's exhausting. And, you know, I say it's not really a comedy. It's not to say there weren't funny moments. Like, there absolutely were.
There is absurdity to the max in this movie.
Oh, 100%. Like, it's kind of like playing Fallout New Vegas with Wild Wasteland on.
Yeah.
Where it's like, here's some of the most horrific shit you've seen, and then here's some goofy shit right out of nowhere.
Here's Nathan Lane being like, my dude.
Yeah, like Nathan Lane in the movie in general, like trying to appear as a straight man was
so fucking funny.
Hilarious.
All I can think of is the scene in the birdcage where he's trying to act like a straight man.
Howdy, man.
And, you know, there was a Richard Kind jump scare at the end.
I did not know he was going to be in this movie, and I was very surprised.
As soon as I saw both Nathan Lane and Richard Kind were in the movie, I was like, okay, here's what's going to happen. Nathan Lane is going to be in this movie as, like, a major character. And then halfway through, that character is going to be played by Richard Kind. And there's going to be no acknowledgement of the change. And that's going to be, like, part of the disorienting nature of the movie.
That would have been so weird.
And they didn't do that. And I was so disappointed they did it, because I really thought I had this movie figured out before I even saw it. I still hold that would have been really funny. Getting to what the movie actually did, I keep thinking of the word uncanny when I think about this movie. Like, obviously through the visual style, especially, like, with the stage play segment. Very highly stylized. But as you're watching it, you just always have this sense that something is horribly wrong. The other best word for it is probably like Kafka-esque.
I don't know what that means, but okay.
Like the writings of Franz Kafka,
Yeah,
like
never.
The Trial or
Yeah, I don't
Metamorphosis.
I don't know.
It felt kind of like The Trial to me, where it's just like it's like all of this shit is happening to this guy and he has no idea how to reconcile with it. You know, every new piece of information you're fed just confuses you more, and it digs a deeper hole that you aren't really meant to be able to crawl out of.
Yes.
It's definitely for a very specific type of audience, and if you're expecting something like Hereditary or Midsommar, like we've said, you're gonna be disappointed. It's a very different type of movie, and it's definitely not a straight horror film.
Whereas, the other two, it's like, oh, I know what's going on, and it's like, there are themes where if you think about them, you're like, oh, I get it. Whereas this one, it's like,
But I do want to finish off, I was afraid, with, like, visually, it's a stunning movie.
Oh yeah, like, I will say my least favorite part of the movie is Act 2 with the forest, but the forest bit itself with, like, the journey and, like, the story of it, it's really good looking. It just dragged for me.
Yeah, and, like, you know, it does all this mixed media shit. But, like, not only that, just, like, the cinematography in general is, like, so stark and beautiful and like chaotic at times. The cinematographer has worked with Aster on all of his features, so it's hardly a surprise, but it's just a masterfully crafted experience.
It's one of those movies where it's like, it's just hard to explain and you need to like watch it for yourself to draw your own conclusions and to see how you feel about it.
Of all of the movies that we're talking about, this is one of my strongest recommendations, but only because it's so difficult to talk about.
It's one of those things where it's like, he took a swing, he did something really different. Some people don't like it, but like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're inclined, give it a watch to see what you think.
Yeah, and honestly, the more I've thought about it since seeing it in the theater, the more I like it and appreciate it.
See, I'm the opposite. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, if I were to watch it again, I would fast forward and get through it just to watch the parts I liked.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to split the difference here? Because I'm thinking A tier. It sounds like you're thinking C tier.
B for Bo, baby.
Put it in B for Bo, baby.
You could have been getting down to this sick beat.
This next movie, honestly, I don't really have a lot to say about it because it's just like, it's a short hour and a half, just it is what it is.
This is kind of a silly billy of a film.
So this movie stars Lupita Nyong'o, and oh my god, in this movie she plays this like kindergarten teacher who is the sweetest fucking teacher, like Miss Honey from Matilda. The teacher's name is Miss Caroline, and she's a very involved, interactive, fun teacher, and she's just so good at it, and I love her so much in this, okay?
And not for nothing, she is beautiful in this movie.
That's the thing. She has a yellow dress on, and with her skin tone, it looks so fucking nice. I love her in this. Like, after seeing her recently in movies, I'm like, oh yeah, she's great. But then I saw her in this, and I was like, I love this woman, okay?
Yeah, like, she's a great actress, like, anyway. Like, she's fantastic in Us.
But this movie made me really fall in love with her.
Yeah, like, you see, like, Alexander England plays the main character, but, like, you see Lupita Nyong'o in this movie, and you're like, I can see why he'd fall in love with her.
Yeah. So basically, this washed-up musician, he drops off his like nephew to school and sees her, and then like weasels his way into like on a field trip to get close to her.
Yeah, it's like a field trip to a petting zoo, right?
Yeah. And then boom, zombies. You have three main adults. So one washed-up musician, you have the kindergarten teacher, and then you have Josh Gad as a kids TV host. And then just a bunch of really cute kids. I don't like kids, but these kids were adorable, and the rapport that she has with these kids, it's just I love it. And then like, so
it really makes you feel like a kindergarten teacher.
I just can't say enough about her, because in the movie she uses the Taylor Swift song of Shake It Off to keep these kids, like, it's like a song throughout the movie that she uses, and it's kind of like her theme song kind of thing. So like the producers couldn't get the rights to it, so Lupita reached out to Taylor Swift to get it because
she did it herself.
Yeah, because she's a fan, and she was like, this song's important to her, and we were wondering, like, could we just use it? And Taylor Swift was like, oh yeah, I don't like Taylor Swift, I don't like the song, I'm not a Swiftie, but this song is used quite well in this movie, so I'm gonna be like, okay, you know what, Taylor Swift, you get one. And it's this movie.
I'm still not gonna go see your Eras Tour movie because I don't like your music.
I'm sorry,
enough.
Your Eras Tour made it so I couldn't see some of the movies I wanted to see in theaters. She kind of just does all she can to keep these kids safe and calm, and like try to like not be scared and think of this as like an adventure. And then there's Josh Gad, and he plays this TV Kids like presenter named Teddy McGiggle, and he's like this peppy TV host, but he hates it so much, and he hates being stuck with these children that love him, and he has to keep on this like TV host front during a zombie attack, and he just wants to drink booze and fuck your mom.
Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't see you there. But see, the problem is I was here first, so you gotta go fuck yourself.
We have kids out here!
Oh my god, I don't give a shit.
This is weird because I don't like Josh Gad, because
your experience with Josh Gad has not been great.
I worked in retail during Christmas, and I was right by the electronics section, and Frozen played all the time. So all I heard was fucking Olaf.
That's your experience with Josh Gad. Like, I have a much more detailed history.
Oh
with
yeah,
Gad.
you actually have like a Broadway.
Well, like, I know him from his work on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And then he was on Broadway, did The Book of Mormon in the original cast. I saw him in that. And then I met him because I stage doored like a loser.
Oh, yeah.
And he was very nice. He was a very sweet guy. So I've always had faith that if you put Josh Gad in the right role, that isn't, in the pocket of Disney, he can really deliver some great comedy, and I think he does that here.
This movie itself is really funny. So, like, the nephew kid, I just remember the scene where the main character, he's teaching his nephew to be Darth Vader.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's trying to get his ex back with this, like, gesture with this kid, because he's showing this girl that he's, like, good with kids, and he's, like, maybe ready. And so he walks in on his ex, like, banging this other dude, and this kid is still he still thinks he has to be Darth Vader, so he does this thing. This kid is so fucking funny. This movie's peppered with humor, and it's just a nice zombie movie. It's not about the zombies, it's about the class and the teacher and just, like, this classroom community, basically.
Yeah, the zombies were more like the setting rather than the obstacle. I also think we're overlooking Alexander England's performance as the main guy.
I totally forgot about him just because of my absolute crush on Lupita. Okay, so,
yeah, 100%.
Sorry I kind of overlooked you because of her and your nephew, but you did a great job too.
Because, like, he plays a real asshole.
Oh, he's such a jerk.
Like, especially at the beginning, he sucks.
And there's this true shit kid in this class, and this kid's just fucking around, and I think he, like, jams the door into the kid's face or something, but it's definitely
He definitely assaults a child at some point.
It's definitely something where you're like, I would have absolutely fucking done that, though. He's right, though.
No, it was just, like, this really unexpected, charming movie.
I'm gonna give this one A for, oh my god, she's such a goddess. The first one.
Directed by James Wan, released on October 29th, 2004.
Almost 20 years ago.
Almost 20 years and 11 movies ago. 12 if you count Saw 11.
This is when James Wan popped off, and he was like, look what I can do with so little.
Arguably the architect of what big budget horror looks like.
But it's not even that big of a budget. It's low budget, high return is what he and, like, Blumhouse are excelling in right now.
But he was sort of the architect that, like you said, that Blumhouse built off of. And the biggest budget horror you see now, I think the blueprint was set by James Wan.
Absolutely, yeah. At least for, like, 2000s, and, like, I like
James
Wan.
You're not seeing horror movies with, like, $150 million budgets.
Yeah.
That's just not a thing.
James Wan, like, I can appreciate him. I do not really like the Conjuring universe just because it's based on hacks and charlatans, but whatever.
That's a story for another time if you want to hear Ray pop off about Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yo, fuck the Warrens. James Wan also does, like, the really high musical stings that I hate, but, like, some of his movies are pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even his first appearance in this video, because he was one of the producers of Megan, right?
But this is where it all started, right?
Yeah, 2004. This is where it all started. A feature based on a short film of Wan's that turned into a cultural juggernaut that's still going.
He's got 20 years on this franchise, and a lot of franchises that go on this long, there's a real dip in quality, and I can't say if there has been or not. But
it's a pretty illustrious club to be in, though, to have a franchise reach double digits.
But also, like, his most recent Saw that came out was, like, pretty hyped up as well. I don't know how well it did, but...
Yeah, I heard it was pretty good. I haven't seen anything past Saw 5, but I've seen Saw many times. The first Saw. I love Saw. And I gotta say this for people who have not seen Saw. If you think you know what the first Saw movie is... You don't.
Go back and watch it, or just watch it. It's the payoff is really good.
I always recommend Saw to people, and they're always like, oh, I can't do, like, gore fest movies. The first Saw is not a gory movie.
It's really not.
The implication is gory, obviously. Like, most people know what the end game of Saw is, like, what is intended for the two captives to do. But Saw is, like, not that visceral of a movie.
It's not until later, with the really elaborate, kind of really stupid traps.
Yeah, it wasn't until the sequels where they started to lean, like, really heavily into the gore, and, like, and the reason people started going was the promise of, like, interesting, creative traps. And then that's when, like, all the brand recognition started, and then that's why gore defines Saw. But the first movie, it's, like, basically psychological. There's some
absolutely.
suggestion of stuff, there's some glimpses. but it doesn't really show off a lot, which is why I think it initially captured a lot of people's imaginations.
Even the ending is just like, bam, and you're like, whoa, what? And that's my very eloquent review.
Yeah, spoiler alert for a 20-year-old movie that spawned 11 sequels. I think overall people tend to overlook it, but when it came out, it was probably one of the best twists of all time.
Oh, I think so, especially because of the way they did it, so it's rewatchable.
And the other thing is that the movie, I think, has gotten very cheesy with age.
Oh, absolutely, but I mean, it's early 2000s, like...
Yeah, like in terms of the editing style, it's got the quick flashes and like a lot of speed ramping in it.
One of the horror podcasts I listen to, they do like kind of rundowns of movies, and after we watched Saw, I listened to their Saw 2, and apparently the editing is just like an early 2000s like Korn video, or just like, you know, the ones you'd see on Much of just like the heavy metal, like really fast edits and really blue and green.
Yeah, and like in a post A24 like elevated horror landscape, it comes across as pretty schlocky.
But I love it though.
I have written here, it's probably a combination of it genuinely aging pretty badly, and also me being 14 when I saw it for the first time and thinking it was the coolest shit ever.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's why there are some things where I'm like, I don't want to rewatch that movie because I remember really liking it, and I'm just going to let 14-year-old me have that.
Love Cary Elwes in the movie. Can't keep an American accent to save his life. No. Every time he raises his voice, he becomes British.
Now where's my family? Where are they?
I was never like an Elwes like fan or whatever. I wasn't like the Princess Bride, like, oh, whatever his name was in that movie. Oh, I love him so much. Saw was one of the first things I really like saw him in. He does good in this movie, but like, is he a good actor?
I think people have been trying to determine that for the last like 40 years.
Dear Cary Elwes, I have never been able to figure out if you are famous.
And also, I do like that that Adam, the guy playing opposite him, I believe was one of the writers of the film.
Oh, really? He did really well.
And, you know, it's a little melodramatic, but I keep, like, adding these qualifiers.
It's a good
like,
movie.
Almost like I'm ashamed of liking Saw, but no, it's a good movie. Watch it.
Well, no,
Saw's really
I think
good.
because I remember there was I think a Saw fatigue in the early 2010s, I think, because that was like when Saw 7 came out and everybody was like, okay, whatever. And there was the game, the really shitty game that came out.
I played the game. Did
I
you
did
play
too.
the game?
I rented it, yeah.
I also rented it. Let's fucking go.
So I think after that, people were like, huh. But no, Saw 1 and 2, like, they slapped, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't not talk about my boy Michael Emerson as Zepp in the movie.
He's just a weird, creepy man, and
he's
I
just
like
a
it.
weird, bug-eyed little guy. Watching Saw, knowing that he would eventually play Benjamin Linus in Lost, you can see so much of Ben Linus's DNA in this performance.
It's the rules.
I broke the rules.
And he's also going to be in that Fallout show that Amazon's making, so...
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what to do with that info, but...
I have to watch it just because I'm, like, weirdly into ghouls.
Yeah, you want to fuck Hancock. It's weird.
He's charming.
You like your emaciated, dead-looking men. What do you think of... S for Saw?
Oh, yeah, I was thinking S for Saw.
Like Scream, you have to put some respect on the name. It launched a franchise, it launched a cultural movement in horror, and you can't separate that from the first movie.
No, absolutely.
Shifting gears from the birth of Blumhouse to the House of Mouse.
Wow, what a transition.
I'm so smart on my feet, holy shit. That was off the dome.
Kindly step all the way in, please, and make room for everyone. There's no turning back now.
I don't remember anything about this movie.
Oh yeah, remember how I said there are no big budget horror movies with $150 million budgets?
Okay, this is Disney though.
This has a budget of $150 million.
Yeah, and what did it make?
It did not make its money back. It made $117 million.
See, Disney throwing money at the problem doesn't always solve it.
So Haunted Mansion stars Lakeith Stanfield, Rosario Dawson, and a whole bunch of other people that deserve better than being in this. And also Jared Leto for some reason.
I didn't know he was in it, but like his name was on screen and I was like, oh no.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, I was shocked when I saw Lakeith Stanfield because I genuinely think he's one of the best actors working today.
Oh no, yeah, I've only seen him, I think, from Knives Out and Get Out, but like, He's great.
You know, also Atlanta, Judas and the Black Messiah, Sorry to Bother You. Like, his resume is just like banger after banger. It's crazy.
He's a loud one. Meh.
I think Disney was right in casting him in terms of them trying to gain clout or try to ride like an elevated horror train, whatever that genre distinction means. I keep saying it, but I'm still not entirely sure what it means.
For me, it's like Hereditary or maybe even The Babadook, where there's like heavy overtones of like some kind of like grief inlaid story there where it's like, oh, it could be an allegory. I don't fucking know, dude.
Yeah, and Haunted Mansion was definitely going for that vibe at times. The problem is that at the end of the day, it's a Disney production based on a theme park ride, and it's impossible to make that separation.
I just wanted a movie full of like, oh, look at this cool wacky ghost in this haunted house thing, and it was like,
you wanted to go on the ride is what it sounds like.
Kind of, yeah, but I'm poor.
Like, I wouldn't say the movie's completely without merit. Like, it does have a sort of like baby's first horror movie feel to it.
It was fun, but like I wouldn't watch it again.
Yeah, like I wouldn't call anything about it particularly scary, but it uses a lot of the aesthetics of horror and it diffuses those elements with a lot of comedy. So in that sense, it actually is a pretty good adaptation of the ride, because the ride's not scary. It's mostly kind of silly.
I think what I was looking for was more Beetlejuice.
I think the problem with adapting Haunted Mansion into a movie as opposed to like Pirates of the Caribbean, which if I recall did pretty well, with Pirates before the movie came out, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was just sort of seen as like a theme park curiosity, and there was no expectation for it to be made into a movie.
I don't really see why theme park rides need movies anyway.
That's what I'm saying. There was no expectation, because the only other ride attraction movies at the time were like Tower of Terror and Country Bears with Christopher Walken and Mission to Mars, which all either didn't release in theaters or totally flopped, or you're just learning that they existed at all.
Yeah.
So like Gore Verbinski swoops in fresh off of directing The Ring and takes this ride that lends itself incredibly well to something like a swashbuckling adventure, and it turns it into a cultural touchstone. And at that point, Haunted Mansion was always going to be competing with Pirates as the new standard bearer. Like, even with other attraction rides, like Tomorrowland came along, Jungle Cruise happened, remember that? And those were both, like, relative flops compared to Pirates. Like, they both made back their initial investment, but not enough for Disney to consider them being worth anything, and the Haunted Mansion didn't even do that.
Well, that's because I think the movies are always going to be safe. It's Disney. It doesn't make for a really interesting outcomes.
Pirates lends itself well to be like an adventure blockbuster, while Haunted Mansion effectively has to be a horror comedy with more focus on comedy, or else general audiences would probably be too scared to interact with the ride slash movie.
They're very limited what they can do with the rating that they want.
And that's to say nothing of the movie sort of trying to do that, like be a quote-unquote real horror movie in the first few acts, and then in the third act it like pivoted to like really big action set pieces and CG elements. It tried to have it all, and it was like really tonally inconsistent. It tries to be both a story of coming to terms with grief for the loss of a loved one and a story about banishing an evil, malevolent ghost. And there are tons of movies that do that, but Haunted Mansion I don't think is the backdrop for this.
I would be more interested in seeing the ghosts in the house. We didn't see a lot of them.
It would work a lot better if they just played it as a serious ghost film. Kind of like the original Haunting movie.
I'm going to go on a tangent here for 13 Ghosts with Matthew Lillard.
Okay.
The DVD section.
It always comes back to this guy.
The DVD section had a thing where you could read about all of the ghosts, like the backstory. So it's like, give me more of that. Don't give me your weird product placement. Give me, I don't know, have that ghost say something funny in that corner over there. I don't know.
So you wanted a Casper movie is what it sounds like. You wanted Casper 1995 with Christina Ricci.
Oh, don't even talk about that. Yes. I will say the movie looked great. I did really like the set dressing, like the house looked great.
Yeah, like it looked like the ride. There were a lot of interesting Easter eggs to compare to the ride.
Yeah, and they were all lost on me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the Easter eggs people would expect to see, you know, like the singing busts are not in the movie for some reason. They're one of the most famous parts of the ride. They were in the Eddie Murphy movie. but not this one. And also, I think the problem with adapting the ride to a film is that the intrigue of the ride, for me at least, Disney theme park connoisseurs will probably disagree with me on this because every Disney ride does have a story. But to me, I don't care about the story or the context of the ride itself. The intrigue of the ride for me is the production design of it, like appreciating the trickery that goes into building the Disney ride, which the movie obviously can't adapt. There's the very famous like ballroom dance sequence in the Haunted Mansion where you see the ghosts like apparate in front of you, and there's a lot of interesting mechanical trickery going on there, and that doesn't translate to a movie because when you're watching a movie, it's like, oh, they did CG. I know how they did that.
Yeah.
There's no like Disney magic to it, you know?
Are we gonna spend an hour on this movie?
No, we're not spending an hour on this movie, but should we talk about the product placement? Because oh my god, there's a lot of product placement in this movie.
Of course there is.
I've left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, but I do have a nuclear take that Ray has heard before, and I hate that I think this because it's such a byproduct of living in like a late stage capitalist corporatized America. I don't know. I don't mind most product placement.
Yeah, I don't really care.
Like, if it's a product that would realistically be available to the characters in the movie in a contemporary setting, I don't think that's a huge deal. If anything, it helps my immersion because it helps ground them in our own reality. It's the difference between a character Googling something and a character Binging something. A Google product placement makes sense. A Bing product placement would be weird. You know what I mean?
No,
like,
yeah.
It's all very, like, contextual and dependent. God, it sounds really bad when I say it out loud.
No, not really. Well, I agree, so.
Yeah, I'm not saying product placement is good, just that I don't really care about it in most cases.
Yeah.
But in this movie, the Baskin-Robbins stuff, the Burger King stuff, those are extremely relevant to the overall plot, and that's sort of where, like, the patience begins to run thin. And the movie really does, like, try your patience with that kind of thing. The horror was effectively non-existent, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't laugh at some of the comedy.
I'm gonna say a lot of that is because you have Danny DeVito.
Yeah, like, there's this scene with Lakeith Stanfield and Danny DeVito, and they're trying to describe the ghost to a police sketch artist played by Hassan Minhaj. And that scene was actually pretty good.
It was funny.
But yeah, I don't know what else I have to say about the movie. Like, it's better than the Eddie Murphy movie, but that's not a high bar. Mid-movie. The Haunted Midgeon. Fucking nailed it.
C for corporate chills.
Do we want to put that on the same tier as Cocaine Bear?
Oh, D for Disney, I guess.
D for Disney. That sounds right. Haunted Mansion.
D for Danny DeVito.
D for Danny DeVito is carrying this movie on his back.
Jeepers creepers, where'd you get those peepers?
Directed by Hatsune Miku.
A trash man, so we're not going to talk about him. I just really like this. It's a wild movie. It's an early 2000s horror bullshit. Siblings, Trish and Derry, because his name is Derry because Stephen King, Derry, Maine, get it?
I get it.
I get it!
Coming home from college, and on the way, they get tailgated by a truck. And later on, they see the same truck, and the driver, it looks like, dumping a body into an abandoned church well. You know what they fucking did?
Did they follow him?
No, they wait till he leaves and then they're like, let's look down the pipe.
Okay, you know what? I'd probably do the same thing.
No, absolutely fucking not. No, you go and call the cops. What are you talking about?
I'd call the cops and then do that.
So Derry, played by baby Justin Long.
Been a banner couple of years for him lately. He's making a big comeback.
Justin Long and Matthew Lillard are having like the most right now. He falls down the pipe and sees like this really fucked up lair. Bunch of corpses. Your huge.
Like the Paris catacombs.
Yeah, pretty much actually. Afterwards, they're like, wow, we probably shouldn't have looked in that pipe. Let's go to a diner. And then they have a phone call with a lady. And she's like, you're gonna die to this song called Jeepers Creepers.
Were they like, that's a silly song title? Anyway, bye.
No, they're basically like, who the fuck are you? What are you fucking talking about, basically? Because obviously, on the way to the station, the creeper mauls the cops. It's cool. He has like really weird wings and stuff. Oh wait, that's later. But still.
Some shit happened in the movie. I don't remember. Maybe it didn't.
I'm just going through like this kind of plot rundown, just so like I'm refreshing myself and telling you what happened. Okay, shut up. I don't know what else to say about this movie. Help. They lead the creeper to this really cool cat lady. In the trivia, it was like this was like an actual like cat lady who had a bunch of cats.
They were filming and they just saw like the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons and they were like, she's perfect!
She's basically the crazy cat lady from The Simpsons. the sister, gets in her truck and she runs the creeper over, just like backs up and runs over it again. Like you never see that. She really hauls ass over him. It's awesome. But it doesn't matter because he's fine.
You know, points for innovation for trying to get rid of the serial killer with a truck.
It was his comeuppance because he was trying to run them off the road with his big ass truck. And they learned that the creeper is an ancient being that awakens, every 23rd spring for 23 days.
So it's basically Pennywise.
Yes.
They're like, we know it's derivative, shut up.
But yeah, so the creeper, it can smell your fear and
wow, so it really is it. No, sorry.
No, and it can just determine if it wants anything of yours and it'll consume it. And then that like body part is his now. Pretty much near the end of the movie, it basically just rips and tears its way through the police station. You just see this like big like creeper thing with wings just like regenerating after it eats a guy. It just kind of like yanks Justin Long away with it to its lair. And then we get like a really cool camera move through a hole, but it's actually Justin Long's eyes. It's just like a really good creature movie. And I have some fun facts and whatnot because to make up for my really bad like writing.
Oh my god, just give me the fun facts.
The song Jeepers Creepers, there's so many versions of it, like when I looked on Wikipedia.
Is it the song I'm thinking of, like the jazz song?
I don't know.
Like Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers?
Yes, because there's another song called Peekaboo by Susie and the Banshees, which has the line, Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers? And so there was like a controversy about it, but both of those songs are in this movie as kind of like a misdirect. The lady in the beginning is saying, I hear you screaming to death, basically, while this song is being played. So in one of the driving scenes, they hear Peekaboo instead of Jeepers Creepers, and they're like, oh, she must have meant this. Kind of thing. It was like,
so they took advantage of that controversy.
Yes, I guess, and both those songs slap. So
I can't get over the killer in this being called the Creeper.
Okay.
And I just imagine a fucking Minecraft creeper.
I can't remember in the movie if they call him the Creeper or not. I think they do, but he's really just like the nameless like being. He's just like a big man, and he's got like big wings. I can't remember what he looks like, but like facial wise.
When he gets near you, you hear. And then he explodes. Putting this on the tier list, Ray.
Oh, God.
This is all you, so where do you want to put it?
I'm gonna put it B for baby Justin Long, because, like, it's got flaws. Oh, God. Don't support the director. It's just like a good early 2000s creature movie, though. It's, I don't know, just throw it on.
We give the director a big Jeepers Creepers. I always think Sinister is like part of the Conjuring movies, or like I confuse it with Insidious.
I can understand that, yeah.
And I know that it's neither of those things, but I always think it's those things.
No, absolutely, because it sounds like it should be Insidious, Sinister, you know?
Exactly. Yeah, I dropped the ball in the summer. I don't know what the hell I was doing, but yeah, only you watched this. I still have not seen this movie. So this guy also directed The Black Phone.
Yes. That is why I wanted to rewatch this, because we had seen The Black Phone when it came out. Since then, I was like, man, I want to watch Sinister again, so I finally did. This movie is basically just Ethan Hawke being a hot writer dad, and he moves into a house because murders happened there, he writes crime, and he committed a really bad sin of not telling his wife.
Like he didn't tell his wife that the crimes happened there?
Yes, so this has happened before, where murders have happened in a house and he's moved there to write crime, and then that just caused a whole bunch of problems. So he did it again, and he didn't tell her, and that also leads to a whole bunch of problems. He finds a box of home movies in the attic, which turn out to be footage of different families just being murdered.
Cool.
So the main one is a family being hung from a tree, and the inspiration for Sinister came from a nightmare of the writer, C. Robert Cargill. So he experienced a nightmare after seeing The Ring. The nightmare was him discovering a film in his attic depicting the hanging of an entire family. And so this scenario just became like the setup for Sinister. And
cool.
Yeah, so like the home movies, they're pretty good. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, behind the scenes, it was Ethan Hawke's first time seeing the home movies when it was filmed, so it was his genuine shocked reaction, that kind of thing.
Do you believe that?
I never believe those. I never believe those. But, like, I will say they are pretty fucked up. Like, and once you find out why, like, I don't know if I want to burn the twist on this movie, you know?
You know what? I want to watch it, so don't.
I'm just gonna say they discover that, like, the entire families have died, but only one of the children, like, have gone missing, and that is why Ethan Hawke, like, moved there to kind of, like, solve that disappearance. So that's the hook of the movie, is like, where did these kids go?
So is the movie like sort of a religious horror, like
No.
invoking kind of Catholic guilt,
No.
or is it just like none of that shit?
No, it's Ethan Hawke being like, I don't want my family to get murdered, oh shit, and making it so he kind of tries to make it not happen. The last 20 minutes, I will say, are like really fucking good, and there are some good misdirects in the movie, so like, I think you're gonna have a good time watching it. I really fucking like this movie.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't watch this with you, because it is one that where every time you tell me about it, I'm like, this movie sounds great.
Yeah, and like the movie itself, I will say, like, the ending, there's a jump scare that the studio wanted, because they're like, oh, we should add this as like a hook for the sequel.
You know what? That's a point in the movie's favor, because if the studio had to pressure them to put in a jump scare, it means they know what they're doing.
But that's the thing. That's what I was getting at, is like, aside from that one jump scare, the rest of the movie just relies on like the building tension of a father learning, like, of a father. It relies on the building tension of a hot writer dad discovering new tidbits of information.
A hot writer father.
A hot writer father from Boston, maybe. Oh, that wasn't even Boston. Oh, fuck. I've lost the thread. It's tension as he's like, oh no, I'm learning this information and I gotta protect my kids and I don't know what to do, and kind of thing. I can't say anything anymore because you want to watch it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's S for Sinister.
God damn it! I can't see, you can't see.
I have nothing against Andre Ovredal. He's the same director as 2019 Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
That movie was great.
Yeah, I remember that one being pretty fun. And like, for an adaptation of a children's book, it was equal parts like goofy and genuinely kind of unsettling.
No, I really liked it.
It felt more like Goosebumps to me than the Goosebumps series that came out this year.
Absolutely. The Goosebumps series wasn't... It was a teen drama with Goosebumps in it.
But yeah, Last Voyage of the Demeter, you know, it was based on one chapter of Bram Stoker's Dracula, when Dracula stows away on the Demeter while traveling from Romania to England.
This movie is not groundbreaking, but for a movie based on like one chapter of a book, and it's like basically a locked room countdown till you're killed by Dracula, I liked it. It gave me that. It's fine.
I'm also just like struggling to remember a lot about
Me too.
it. Yeah, like performances were serviceable. I could barely tell what the fuck was going on.
It was very dark.
When they were above deck, because it was all at nighttime.
It was very dark. I don't remember if Dracula looked good or not.
He looked like a skinny monster man.
Okay.
Basically.
Like a bad boy?
Yeah, he looked like Batboy.
Okay.
We saw 2 Dracula movies this year. Here's how you do it. Last Voyage, then Renfield. Shot, chaser.
Yeah, well, it's chronological.
Exactly. One happens way, way, way after the other one. No, honestly, my biggest thought coming out of Last Voyage was it just really made me want to play Return of the Obra Dinn.
I just want to watch Renfield again.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, that was, yeah. I don't know.
I'm thinking D for Demeter. More like Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Now that it wasn't that bad, though. It was a serviceable movie. It gave me what it promised. It's fine. I'm saying C for a serviceable spelled wrong.
C for crap. We forgot that Dracula is on this boat. Man, we talked so long about so many of the other movies, and then this one's just like, this one's here too.
Yo, Stacy! Talk to me, baby!
We couldn't find any showings for this one in our town.
Taylor Swift.
We had to go all the way to Salem, Massachusetts to find a showing for this one.
This movie was one of the ones where I was hyped all year to see it, and I still am hype about it.
Right off the bat, it was great. It's technically a YouTuber movie, which feels weird to say.
Yeah, but we're in the era of YouTuber movies.
The guys behind the channel, Raka Raka, which I am...
That sounds very Australian.
I'm not familiar with them at all, but they haven't posted to their channel regularly in a few years, likely because they were working on this movie. So, you know, they were serious about this shit.
There's this like plasticine hand. You don't know if the hand's in it, but it's a hand.
Yeah,
and
it's like cast in something.
It's got writing all over it, and you grab it and you say, "Talk to me," and you let spirits in.
Yeah, and like then you allow the ghosts to talk to you. The apparent reason for the hand, according to Danny in interviews, is that because he suffered a car accident as a teen And when he was in shock, he kept shaking in the hospital. Like his hands couldn't stop shaking. And then when his sister took his hand, he was finally able to like come down a bit and relax. And the human connection of touch is what brought him out of his trance. And I think that makes sense. Like if you look at the hand in the context of the film, like I think that tracks. Like the horror is just as much in losing the ability to connect as it is establishing that connection.
I really like that they went the route they did, and she is fantastic. The main actress, oh my god.
Sophie Wilde as Mia in the movie. The screenplay demanded so much of her. And like for a relative newcomer to film to acting, like I think this was her first film.
There's like that whole scene.
She carried that emotional performance.
The whole scene where she's acting as different ghosts in her body, it's fantastic. Yeah. She's so fucking creepy.
There's so much to praise about this movie. And, you know, along with the Raka Raka guys, just as important to the creation of the movie, you know, being an Australian film, is probably Samantha Jennings of Causeway Films, which is the company that also produced The Babadook. So it's all starting to make sense now, isn't it?
Hell yeah, let's go Australian horror.
This is a movie I can easily see becoming a cult classic or even just a regular classic. Like, The Hand has such a good look to go down as an iconic piece of horror paraphernalia. Not that, like, merchandising is the first thing you should think of.
Oh, I've already seen merch of like official hands.
Just because it's such a unique concept and it's so well executed.
Well, it's simple but effective.
And like as a horror film, it will fuck with you even if you have a high tolerance. There's one particular scene in the movie that made everybody in our theater, which granted was only 6 people, but it made everybody in the theater cringe in like a good way.
For me, what got me was, it was a scene in the hospital where the sister is saying every time he's awake, he tries to kill himself. Mm-hmm. And when they're bathing him, he's in the hospital bathroom and he's just fucking going at himself, like bashing his head into the floor. And then he like licks up his blood. And for some reason, that scene there really got me because I'm like, oh fuck yeah, he really is just gonna try to kill himself no matter fucking what. Like those ghosts really want him.
The violence is pretty brutal and it's not afraid to harm some kids, which we love. We love that on Graveyard Shift.
I like it when a movie isn't afraid to go after kids. I think more so now. There used to be a thing where kids were kind of untouchable in movies, and I think now more so than ever, movies are like, you know what? Fuck it.
And actually, speaking of those teen protagonists, the main complaint I've heard about this movie is that a lot of people didn't appreciate the dialogue, and I've heard it described as like Tumblr dialogue.
Have you ever sat next to a teen on a bus?
Exactly. These people are smoking dick. Like, they're so believably written.
Yeah.
They were cringe and stupid at times, because that's how teenagers are. Being a movie that, you know, was distributed by A24, they really know how to curate their catalog, because this movie has that like A24 feel, you know? Yeah. Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say that. Like, it walks that line of mounting tension so well. The ending feels earned. Nothing about the movie felt cheap. It all felt earned. Where do you want to put it on the tier list?
Well, I was thinking A for Australia, but I'm trying to think of an S.
S for shake my hand.
It's so stupid.
Won't you shake a poor sinner's hand?
Like a surgeon.
This one I did not see, and I have not seen in so long.
Yeah, and this one's pretty fresh on the mind here. It is a movie franchise that gets lumped in with Saw a lot of the time, actually. Yeah, honestly, with how much this movie was hyped to me over the years, I don't know, man. We already talked about Saw, and how whenever I try to recommend it to people, I always either get like, oh, I don't do gore, which like we've already talked about, or I recommend Saw to somebody and they're like, oh, well, you must also love Hostel then, because that's super gory. So I was expecting something, you know, super gory, and it wasn't.
Hostel 1 is like Saw 1, where people remember it to be more gory than it was because they're thinking of the sequels, and they remember Eli Roth being this like over-the-top gore guy.
Yeah, and that's not to say he isn't. It's just that I think this movie is more restrained than all of the other ones.
This ain't no Cabin Fever.
Yeah, like, is it gorier than Saw 1? Yeah, absolutely. Is it a movie that I would consider gruesome, or even in the medium range of gory? Not really. Like, if Saw, for me, is a 2 or 3 out of 10 on the gore scale, Hostel to me is like a 4.5 at most. There is a bit involving a guy's Achilles.
That's the only thing I remember about the movie. And that's the part that made me hate the Achilles tendon.
Yeah, and there's some eye shit, and like those are both quite squicky, but other than that, like, where are the blood fountains? Where are the piles of guts? Actually, now that I'm saying that, I think I'm probably underselling it.
I only remember the Achilles tendon thing from Hostel, though. My Eli Roth horror is Cabin Fever, which is like, I would say like a 7 on the gore scale.
Where would you put, like, Bone Tomahawk on the gore scale?
Oh boy. Oh boy. I mean, other than that one scene.
That one scene, what would you put that one scene at?
For me, that was like a 6.
That's only a 6! That's a 6!
Only because you can see it like dropping at the end.
To everybody else on Earth, that is a 10.
I don't
Again,
have a
our
dick.
scale is fucking broken. This is what I'm getting at.
I'm so sorry.
I am probably underselling it at this point. There were a couple moments in the movie that made me wince. Like, it's definitely more brutal and visceral than Saw 1, but I feel that, like the Saw series, like you said, the movies probably get gorier and more cavalier about it in the sequels, and I haven't seen them. You know, otherwise you could probably just copy-paste my thoughts on Saw and apply them to Hostel, but without, you know, without the nostalgia.
From what I remember, Hostel didn't really have like a, oh, this story or twist is really good. It's just these guys go to a hostel and they're assholes and then they die.
Pretty much. Like, it's very much a product of 2006. It doesn't have, like, as much cheesy editing as Saw, so it's probably aged slightly better. That, and I think that while Saw has very sort of surface level philosophy to it, I can see Roth trying to say a lot more with Hostel. There are themes of exploitation, xenophobia, fetishization of certain groups, and then especially once we get to the third act of the movie, there's the whole theme of the rich torturing, violating, abusing the poor, the vulnerable for their own amusement or sexual gratification. It's the same kind of stuff that was covered a few years ago in Squid Game, and it's sort of, I think, played with 2006 expectations, because you assume that since they're in some foreign European country, I think it was assumed of the audience that they were going to think the culprit would be some sort of non-American person who is just fucked up, when in reality, no, it's just the rich that is fucking over everybody, just like in real life. I just don't have that reverence for Hostel that I do for Saw. So I think I'm gonna put Hostel in C for could have been gorier.
Don't worry, Eli Roth. You'll be hired later
You'll
on.
get yours later.
Must be the season of the witch.
Okay. I'm excited about this one. Okay.
Her entire back half of October was occupied by this movie.
Okay, so this movie is a series of vignettes, kind of like shorts, like they're just stories that are connected because they're in the same town, and the through line is basically the spirit of Halloween, and he is adorable. He is a small boy in orange footy PJ pajamas, got a sack on his head. His name's Sam. He's fucking adorable, okay? When Halloween was over, November 1st, I went to the nearest like Halloween store and I bought myself a Sam costume. So I have the footy pajamas, I have the head, I have the broken lollipop, okay? It's great. Shut up.
I didn't say anything. It's nice to see, yeah, like a Halloween movie that you can watch around Halloween that is just so steeped in Halloween imagery.
This movie is Halloween Town, but if they allowed like actual kills.
That's the thing, like I'm trying to think of any other movies that like make use of that sort of Halloween imagery, and all I can think of is like Halloween Town and like Hocus Pocus.
Yeah. Sam is the spirit of Halloween, and he appears and he enforces the rules of Halloween, and those rules are: always wear a costume, always pass out treats to trick-or-treaters, never blow out a jack-o'-lantern before midnight, and always check your candy. Each of these vignettes kind of like deal with one of those rules, like the Brian Cox one. He's just like an old curmudgeon and he locks the door, so he gets fucked up by Lil Sam.
Yeah, and here's the two genders of media consumption. I was watching Trick or Treat and I saw Brian Cox and I was like, oh, it's the guy from Succession. And you were like, who the fuck is that? And then later I was watching Succession and then you were like, I don't care about this. And I was like, look, it's the guy from Trick or Treat. And you were like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
My lawyer used to work for the Justice Department. Who's your lawyer? Mr. fucking Magoo?
Anna Paquin is in this, very young Anna Paquin. They were monsters themselves, so they didn't, like, do anything with the rule. He was just watching, chilling, like, Sam was just watching them do their thing.
Yeah, the spirit of Halloween was present in their shenanigans, but...
Yeah, there was little kids who got, like, fucked up by ghost kids, and Sam was just watching them get terrorized, and...
Yeah, we don't really get to see Sam in action fully until the third act.
No, so yeah, in the beginning, he kind of, like, you don't, like, you see, like, this little kid, like, in, like, a PJs, like, cute little kid in PJs.
I love how this entire review is like, yeah, it's about Halloween, and, like, a bunch of kids get killed. It's the cutest fucking movie I've ever seen.
Shut. Okay, no, you don't even understand.
Am I wrong?
No, you don't even understand. Okay, so one of the fun facts is, so Anna Paquin and her, like, sisters or whatever are shopping for Halloween costumes. And there's this one kid who's peeking into the change rooms. That kid is the one who plays Sam, is, like, the body, and the one is in the costume. I really love this kid because his body language is Sam.
It's, like, clearly a 6-year-old.
It's the sackhead. The sackhead is adorable. And then it comes off, and you see this, like, really weird pumpkin-headed thing, and I'm like, it's still cute, though. He goes goblin mode, and I'm just like, yes, sweetie, you're doing so well.
Ray just sees a lot of herself in Sam.
See, it's just one of those movies where it's like, it's obviously about this holiday, it embodies it, there's a lot of actors where you're like, oh, it's them. And then Sam is adorable. Just, this movie's great. S for Sam. Duh.
It's time to stop! Where the fuck are your parents? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services.
You guys hopefully watched our first episode about Five Nights at Freddy's. Now it's time for the movie review.
Hey, remember how we did that and then we saw the movie and then I forgot everything that I saw and learned because I just remembered that?
Yeah, you internalized nothing.
No, as soon as we saw the movie and I didn't need to know the information, it's out. It dumped out of my brain.
So you're telling me when we do our FNAF Part 2 video, I'm gonna have to retell you everything?
Yeah.
Alright, so Five Nights at Freddy's, directed by Emma Tammy, released October 27th of 2023.
When we went, boy oh boy was it packed, and there were dress-ups. And honestly, it ruled.
Yeah, honestly, that experience did rule. Like, we don't need to spend too much time on this movie. Like, we already did a 2-hour video on this, and we are not a FNAF show. But no, it was actually a great experience to watch that movie in that big crowd.
This movie is not for a, hey honey, let's see what's on Netflix. Oh, Five Nights at Freddy's, what's that? Let's see. No, absolutely not. This is you either know what you're getting into, you know the lore, and you're like, oh, okay. Or you're going in not knowing what the fuck's happening, because the writing, not good. This movie's not a good movie, but it's great when you see it with people who know.
Yeah, it is a movie made exclusively for large gatherings of fans of the franchise, and exactly nobody else.
It's not an entry point at all.
It's not a video game adaptation like The Last of Us or even the Mario movie where like general audiences were kept in mind. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that they bring up that is like fan service, but they don't explain why it's fan service, even though like the story and the fan service for FNAF kind of go hand in hand.
I had to look this up. So Matthew Lillard comes in last minute in a rabbit suit and he screams, "I always come back." And I googled it, and apparently that's just like a line he says in the games, but not in the movie. So he just says it, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, he said the thing," and I'm just like, but what? He doesn't always come back. He's been in this movie for 5 minutes.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense in the context of the movie. The thing is also, it does the reveal of William Afton. You know, they did do that, and the best moment was when they did that, and then one guy in the theater yelled, "What?"
That was great.
That was great.
Yeah.
But what they didn't even establish in the movie that William Afton is the guy that built the robots.
No, absolutely
like, that is
not.
that is a thing I think you're just supposed to know.
That's the thing. He comes in the golden Bonnie suit, and you're just supposed to know.
Also, in that scene, he did not have to be in the Spring Bonnie suit.
He didn't. Oh, it's Spring Bonnie. Whatever, I'm sorry. I forgot.
Yeah, he was just being a dramatic bitch.
But in the movie, there's a plot of like, the little girl draws pictures to communicate with them, and she draws a golden rabbit to signify this is the murderer. So we're supposed to know that, oh, he wore the suits when he killed them, right?
They did show that in the opening credits, in like that sort of like
faux
Scott Cawthon 8-bit kind of style. I was like, oh, they're showing, but I was like, they're also kind of giving the game away a little early here.
This movie, you can tell that Scott wrote it. I'm sorry, not sorry.
If you know the lore intimately and you know all of the YouTubers and such.
Yeah, when fucking Game Theory came on, and everybody was like, whoa, and you had to say, that's MatPat.
Yeah, when MatPat showed up, I thought we were in the Taylor Swift movie for a second. The theater erupted.
The taxi guy, I didn't know who that is, but everybody was hyped, and I was like, okay, cool, guess that's the guy.
Yeah.
Also, how are they in a taxi?
I don't, ghost magic.
How are they in a taxi?
Like, if you don't know any of this stuff, though, the movie is pure fucking nonsense. I saw a tweet that was confused at the movie's distinction between Freddy and Golden Freddy, and they were like, oh, apparently these were two different characters, and like,
yeah,
I get it.
Oh, now I get it.
Because that distinction is not well established in the movie.
And also, I'm just gonna say, the scene with them building the fort was the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
It was adorable and so dumb.
Also, for a game about watching security cameras at night, he sure sleeps through most of the night.
Yeah, he slept through most of those nights. And also, the security guard character was horrifically written.
It was so
There's a moment where
dumb.
Josh Hutcherson is like, why didn't you explain this to me? And she's like,
I really did try in my own way.
It's like, well, explain it in a normal way. What the fuck?
This movie, the more I think about it, the more I hate it.
Like,
I only liked it because we saw it with that, like, the huge amount of people who were really into it right off the heels of that video, so I knew what we were getting into. I knew stuff. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, that movie, I hated that movie.
I think it was something that was worth seeing because it was kind of a cultural event, and to see it in that environment was great, but it's not a good movie.
It's really not.
And I harp on it all the time, but it's just a wonder how we went from the first game of the franchise to this.
I don't know.
Which is ostensibly a horror movie. I mean, you know, there's a dismemberment in it, but it leans so much more into the comedy
That's
aspect.
the thing. If this movie, like, I understand why they wouldn't go higher than a PG-13, but if they were allowed to, this movie could have been so much more.
And, you know, the way the animatronics were done had basically zero scare factor to them. All the props to the Jim Henson Company.
They were great. The animatronics themselves were great.
Yeah, they were great puppets. They were great animatronics, but they had no scare factor to them. You could make the argument that with the animatronics especially, that, like, it's all camp. But that is not how the franchise started.
No.
And it's all a byproduct of it leaning into the merchandising and, you know, appealing to children, of which there weren't actually as many as we thought there would be in the theater, because we saw it opening night. The animatronics looked amazing for what they were trying to do, you know, like make them cute. I just don't agree with what they were trying to do.
No.
But still all the respect on them. But yeah, not a great movie. All right, where are we putting this on the list, Ray?
F for Freddy.
F tier?
No.
I mean, F for Freddy would be very fitting.
I feel bad for putting it at F, but it's really bad. It's no Willy's Wonderland, which we have to see still.
It does border on, like, I think offensively bad if you try to view it as its own product. You know what? We gotta set the floor. F for Freddy.
Okay, F for Freddy.
Our first video is a 2-hour video about Five Nights at Freddy's, and then we see the movie and we're like, well, that fucking sucked.
Because we are like 2 months out of that. And looking back, yeah, that movie was bad.
I can't state, though, how much fun it was to see that movie in the theater.
Experience was an S tier, but the movie itself is trash.
We got one movie left here, Ray, and it's one that I didn't see, but you did.
Yeah, so when you left me all alone for that fun time you had in America.
Oh my god. The night you saw this, I was at an Ellie Goulding concert, so...
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, it was released November 17th, so I saw it around then. Directed by Eli Roth. I went and I saw it in an empty theater, aside from like one other guy and Malcolm McDowell.
Literally Malcolm McDowell, or a guy who looked like Malcolm McDowell?
I'm totally sure it was Malcolm McDowell, and apparently he's in Canada because he has that show.
Yeah, he's doing Son of a Critch for some reason.
But okay, so like Trick or Treat, this is the most Thanksgiving movie that there is.
In fairness, there aren't a lot of Thanksgiving movies out there.
Exactly.
The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which I made you watch as my Thanksgiving movie.
It is set in Plymouth. There's like a parade that's happening, so people are dressed in like pilgrim costumes. The main guy is dressed in a John Carver mask. It's silly.
No one does that at Thanksgiving. That's a made-up thing.
But it's set in Plymouth, so they're having like a Thanksgiving parade. But so it's really weird seeing this movie in November as a Canadian because our Thanksgiving is before Halloween. So this movie rounds out my holiday trilogy of Trick or Treat and Krampus. You just gotta modify the order, I guess. The opening tells you exactly the type of movie it's gonna be. It's Eli Roth, so you kind of think it's gonna be torture porny or crude. It's not as crude as it could be, like it's no Cabin Fever. The opening scene is it's Black Friday, and a mob of people are wanting to get into the store. The owner of the store has a daughter who, nepotism baby, lets some people into the store from the side, and this causes just a mob crush.
I've not seen a lot of like effective trampling scenes in film,
and then it's just like over the top gnarly injuries that you're like, oh god, ew, that kind of thing. It's a good watch. I liked it. It's a good opening scene. It's a not at all serious holiday slasher thing. I like it. Some of the kills, there's one, it's like the Final Destination tanning bed scene.
Oh yeah, that's a rough one.
I have like few things that kind of get to me. One is like burning skin or immolation. So the tanning bed scene in Final Destination, I don't really like. So there is this one scene that they took from the original trailer that was released. So this movie is I'm gonna have to do backstory for this. So in 2007, Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino make Grindhouse, Planet Terror, and Death Proof.
It was 2 short features. That was a
they're 2 regular length movies, but it's a double feature like Grindhouse.
But it was a double feature that they played in theaters.
Yes, but then they made fake Grindhouse trailers. So they got 5 different directors to do 5 different trailers, and one of them was Eli Roth and Thanksgiving. So one of the kills in that trailer, it depicts this lady like getting cooked in an oven like a turkey, basically.
Makes sense.
And that makes it into this movie, and I don't like it. It's very effective though. A for apple pie, because you eat that at Thanksgiving, right? Apple pie. At least I do.
I think Thanksgiving's more of a pumpkin pie holiday.
Oh, I don't like pumpkin pie.
Now we only have 2 more Grindhouse trailers to make into real movies. They showed 5 Grindhouse trailers before Grindhouse, and then 3 of them have been made into like actual movies.
Machete's great, okay? Danny Trejo's a gem.
Isn't Machete canonically part of the Spy Kids cinematic universe?
Yes, sir. Machete's their uncle, baby. I love it. A Hobo with a Shotgun I haven't seen. Thanksgiving, obviously. And then there was Don't by Edgar Wright, and I can't remember what that trailer was. I do not remember anything about it.
Don't was basically every single horror trope Edgar Wright could think of, and then he just put them all in one trailer. So I don't see Don't getting made into a movie, because it would just be the most generic horror movie ever made.
Yeah, probably.
Werewolf Woman of the SS, on the other hand, I'd see that directed by Rob Zombie.
Okay, so I think maybe it's just because it's Rob Zombie that's why it didn't get made, because he was like busy with Halloween and whatnot.
Yeah, well, he's not doing anything these days. Rob Zombie looks like a dog. All right, you want me to run through this list one last time?
Yeah.
So on F, we have Five Nights at Freddy's.
I'm so sorry, but yeah.
In D, we have Disney's Haunted Mansion. C, Cocaine Bear, Last Voyage of the Demeter, and Hostel. B tier, Knock at the Cabin, Scream 6, Beau is Afraid, Jeepers Creepers.
Yeah.
A, Tar, Megan, Renfield, Gonjiam Haunted Asylum, Little Monsters, and Thanksgiving. S tier, Scream, Saw, Sinister, Talk to Me, and Trick or Treat.
Yeah, I think that works.
The only movie that came out this year that we put in S tier
was Talk to Me.
And I think that is rightly deserved.
But the thing is, I think the list was a little bit skewed for S tier because I watched a lot of movies that I knew I really liked this year.
There's a lot of nostalgia involved in like S tier.
Yeah, if it was movies that just came out this year, it'd be a lot different. But because I specifically watch horror movies I really love around Halloween, there's going to be entries where I gush about them, and that's it.
But yeah, that is every horror movie we saw in 2023. Let us know if you like this. Let us know what movies you saw in this past year, what horror movies you saw in this past year, or horror adjacent movies, like Renfield's not a horror movie.
Or if you took any of these as like a recommendation and you liked it, and if you could take one movie and watch it, I would say Little Monsters. I think that one's good for everybody.
Yeah, and leave in the comments which one of our takes was the shittest, please.
Oh god, I'm sorry about all the people we made with F for Freddy.
So that's, I think, gonna wrap it up for us. I've been Jacob DeRose. That has been Ray.
Hi. Bye.
Thank you for listening or watching Graveyard Shift.
Don't get got. Keep your windows closed. Lock your doors.
So that 2024 doesn't seep in, because everything is only going to get worse. Happy New Year!
I can't wait for the ongoing climate wars. Woo!